A barren wasteland swept by biting winds, and the echoing crash of falling rocks suddenly shakes with a deafening rumble. A heavily armored convoy tears through the dust. Inside one of the transport vans, 6 passengers sit in tight formation. They tremble violently. Maybe it is just the rough suspension of the rig, or maybe a creeping dread of what lies ahead. A heavily geared guard breaks the silence. He barks out that they have all read the briefing packets. But he makes it crystal clear. Stay strictly within the green zones, and absolutely do not say or do anything to trigger the inmates. His final warning is brutally simple. Keep your heads down and watch your backs. The cabin plunges back into a suffocating silence, until a woman with sparkling eyes breaks the ice. Her name is Lala. Turning to the guy right next to her, she flashes a warm smile. Dante Kong chimes in, introducing himself with a firm handshake. As it turns out, he is joining the science department too. Lala chuckles at the wild coincidence. Dante just shrugs, guessing that the science slots The tension finally snaps, and the rest of the crew starts speaking up. One guy mentions he is the new ethics professor. Another handles music, while the last 2 are covering math and art. Apparently, their subjects did not exactly draw a massive crowd of volunteers. The music instructor lets out a massive sigh of relief. The dead silence for the past hour was driving him completely insane. Gazing out the reinforced window, the ethics teacher mutters that everyone's nerves are just fried. After all, whoever dreamed they would be deployed to Fogland. It is the largest penitentiary on the... Lala waves off the gloom, telling him to stop spooking everyone. Besides, it is officially branded as a state-of-the-art international facility. How bad could it really be? But the ethics teacher fires back. The international label is exactly what makes this whole operation so shady. He leans in, asking if she knows the dark history of Fogland's creation. Exactly 50 years ago, a colossal meteorite slammed into this very desert. A mere 5 years after the impact, global superpowers joined forces, constructing a massive supermax prison right over the crater. The music guy suddenly snaps his fingers. That completely explains the crazy urban legends flooding the internet. Wild theories claiming the place is actually locking up extraterrestrials and freaks. The ethics teacher gives a grim nod of agreement. He lowers his head, dropping his voice to a haunting whisper that only the 6 of them can hear. Some rogue scholars actually swear that Fogland blew the literal gates, which means they might be walking in there to educate absolute monsters. Dante bursts into a stifled chuckle. He honestly cannot believe humanity survives in the darkest corners of the globe, and every single person deserves a decent education, regardless of what they have done or who they are. The ethics guy glares back, asking if Dante seriously feels zero fear right now. Even if the alien rumors are complete garbage, they are still... This fortress locks up the most lethal criminals on Earth. But Dante simply shakes his head, completely unfazed. In his eyes, these inmates are just misunderstood souls, starved of proper guidance. At least, that is what he tells himself. The rest of the crew stares at him like he is crazy, but a harsh crackle from a guard's walkie-talkie cuts the debate short. They are precisely 5 minutes away from breaching the gates of Fogland. Peering through the heavy steel grates of the van, they finally witness the towering, imposing entrance. It is a colossal monolith of cold steel and unforgiving justice. A massive, ragged banner hangs over the main archway, looking like it was sloppily painted by the inmates themselves. The security escort barks another harsh command: absolutely zero photography allowed on the premises. Furthermore, all personal bags stay zipped until they hit the official confiscation checkpoint. Dante glances around the dreary landscape. He thinks to himself that even if he wanted to snap a picture, this ridiculously thick mist, the visibility is practically zero. Then again, they do not call this place Fogland for nothing. While they stare into the gray abyss, the guard details their exact deployment protocols. Once their personal gear is completely stripped and stored, follow orders to the letter, or risk getting someone killed. Dante inwardly... Soon the instructors are divided and sent down different corridors. Dante keeps a cool head, though the oppressive vibe of the prison definitely sends a slight shiver down. He takes a deep breath, reminding himself there is absolutely zero reason to panic. It is just another facility where human beings reside. However, the second he steps into his designated room, he freezes. This is not a classroom. It is a heavy-duty isolation vault with a massive reinforced barrier, completely separating him from his students. He considers it total overkill. Pounding his fists against the bulletproof glass, he questions how he's supposed to run a classroom from behind a barricade. Right on cue, a warden swings the heavy steel door open, announcing the inmates are coming in. Until the final bell rings, he must stay glued to his chair no matter what happens. Otherwise, his survival isn't guaranteed. Dante stares ahead, a wave of dread washing over him. The rusted hinges screech as the guards shove the convicts inside. But these aren't your average thugs. Every single one looks utterly mutated, like monsters straight out of a nightmare. Dante's stomach drops, his gaze bouncing between the twisted figures. Deep down, they're still human. Right. Even so, how do you educate a freak with an elongated neck, or a towering brute missing both eyeballs? A chilling memory flashes in his mind. The ethics professor warning him they might be lecturing actual fiends. Dante shakes off the ridiculous thought. He needs to pull himself together. These are just living, breathing outcasts. Straightening his posture, he grabs the microphone inside his booth. He announces his name, figuring a quick joke will ease the tension. He assumes they've had plenty of laid-back subjects, like painting or music, but science usually takes the crown. Maybe they want to construct a spaceship and blast out of here. Crickets. The punchline crashes and burns miserably. Absolutely nobody cracks a smile, except for a massive fur-covered brute, who chuckles quietly in the back. Dante wants the floor to swallow him whole, from the pure agonizing embarrassment. Whatever. Brushing it off, he pivots away from spacecrafts. They're diving into a breezy, grounded subject. Today's lecture is all about reconnecting with Mother Earth. Resting on every single desk sits a plain old sweet potato. It's literally a kindergarten science project. But considering these apex predators are ruthless mobsters raised in the bloody underworld, nurturing a plant is entirely alien to them. Sure, it feels pretty pointless right now, but give it a plastic cup, some water, and a drop of care, and they'll watch it sprout, teaching these killers the true value of life. He keeps rolling with the speech. Sure, every single soul locked up in Fogland is labeled a lethal menace, but they still showed up to class. Just like this humble vegetable, they possess boundless potential to blossom, no matter how toxic their surroundings are. So starting right this second, their mission is to cultivate these little spuds. A sudden movement breaks the silence. A hulking inmate whose skull literally resembles a lumpy potato growls, asking if the teacher is mocking him. Dante freezes in pure panic. He completely missed the guy's weird head before making the analogy. The lecture grinds to a screeching halt as loud crunches echo through the room. Half the class is devouring the raw vegetables whole. Dante frantically yells at them to stop chewing, begging them to cultivate the plants instead. But then he pauses. What kind of savages is he dealing with? Still, nobody forced them into this classroom. So why the hell did they bother showing up, if not to get educated? Without warning, a menacing voice cuts through the chaos, demanding he drop the garbage small talk and spill the secret on how to manifest fog. Dante blinks in confusion, trying to piece it together. Yeah, this prison is blanketed in mist, but do they seriously want a meteorology lesson? The mutant convict loses his patience. What kind of useless scientist knows absolutely nothing about the mist? Dante stammers out that he's just an ordinary instructor, assuming the guy is messing with him. But in a split second, a deafening crack echoes as the bulletproof barrier splinters into a massive spider web. When the monster violently rams his skull against the pane, Dante shrieks in sheer terror, completely blindsided by the raw, brutal strength, and desperately scrambles to radio the security team, screaming that an inmate is breaching the booth. A terrifying realization hits him. Wait, wasn't this supposed to be military-grade armor? Before the thought even processes, heavily armed wardens kick the doors down, aiming their assault rifles, and scream a single order at Dante. Hit the deck. In a heartbeat, they unleash a deafening barrage of gunfire straight into the crowd of convicts, raining absolute hellfire on the classroom, while Dante curls into a pathetic ball behind his shattering shield. Watching the relentless hail of gunfire, he pounds against the heavy metal door. Instead, a cold-blooded guard barks an order. Stay put until the absolute slaughter is complete. Dante's chest heaves with ragged gasps. He chokes out a desperate question. Are they seriously going to butcher all these inmates? They just can't. Regardless of their crimes, wholesale slaughter crosses the line. His protests die in his throat. Right before his eyes, the eyeless inmate casually snatches a guard, hoisting the man up single-handedly before effortlessly crumpling his skull straight through the reinforced tactical helmet. Crimson spray paints the walls as the rest of the inmates, acting less like men and more like rabid predators, showing zero hesitation or remorse. Human life means nothing here. Dante starts spiraling into a full-blown panic, the darkness slowly dragging him under. But right before he completely blacks out, he spots one solitary inmate, sitting dead still amidst the carnage, completely ignoring the potato on his tray. The terrifying part, that guy is staring right back. Inmate number 182. Gasping, Dante jolts awake. His eyes flutter open, locking onto a rusted ceiling fan that hasn't spun in decades. Beside his cot, a shadow crouches, blinking away the haze. The figure shifts into focus, an inmate slowly rising to his feet, piercing blue eyes locking fiercely onto Dante's. A suffocating tension hangs in the air for a long moment. Finally, panic flares as he scans the grim surroundings, a sinking realization hitting him. He's locked in. He frantically asks about their location, only for the inmate to calmly claim this is his home. Utterly baffled, Dante studies the man, his racing pulse finally slowing as the grim reality settles in. He's completely alone with a convict. Trying to piece the timeline together, his brain scrambles for recent memories. All he can picture is the blood-soaked riot, the tactical squads unleashing a storm of lead onto the cell blocks, the grotesque slaughter of the guards, and then absolute darkness. Dante swallows hard, asking if they're still inside the facility. The inmate gives a slow nod. He presses further. Is this Fogland? Another chilling nod. The pieces suddenly click together. Did this guy drag his unconscious body all the way down here? The silent captive confirms it, then casually slides that same pathetic potato from earlier across the floor. The request. He wants agricultural lessons. Dante's entire reality shatters. At first he assumed this guy was just slow, but this is sheer, unadulterated madness. Tremors of absolute fury rack his body. He sucks in a sharp breath and finally snaps screaming at the top of his lungs. He kidnapped him in the middle of a slaughter, just to learn basic gardening. Over a damn sweet potato, this lunatic dragged him straight into a lethal snake pit. His mind spins out of control. The danger level here is astronomical. The ethics instructor wasn't lying. These inmates aren't human. They are savage monsters that shred everything in their path. It's over. He's a dead man walking. He shoots a panicked glare at his captor, noticing the guy's right hand suspiciously tucked behind his back. Running entirely on adrenaline, Dante lunges forward, dropping his shoulder and tackling the inmate hard into the dirt, instantly pinning the guy down with both hands wrapped tightly around his windpipe. Victory surges through him. Compared to those absolute behemoths outside, this scrawny dude, as long as he keeps a cool head, he can flip the script. Step 1. Disarm the maniac. Pinning the convict, Dante shoots a glance behind the man's back, expecting a shiv. Instead, he finds absolutely nothing. The dude's entire right arm is missing. The sheer absurdity diffuses Dante's, prompting him to firmly bind the prisoner to the iron bed frame using his necktie. Panting, Dante mutters a breathless apology for the rough takedown, but firmly blames the idiot's reckless stunt for nearly getting them killed. Getting abducted while already locked inside a maximum security prison is peak insanity. You wanted agriculture tips, Dante scoffs. Too bad. I can't teach a guy who doesn't have a single working brain cell. He orders the captive to just eat the raw spud, his mind racing as he tries to calculate when the tactical squads will breach the sector, or at least when the next. Peeking anxiously through the grime-covered bars, he holds his breath, wondering what fresh nightmare awaits in the aftermath. The whole facility has to be on lockdown. Heavily armed guards are definitely hunting for him right now, and the second he spots a uniform, he is out of this nightmare. Too bad the universe has other plans. Thanks to this incredibly thick, suffocating mist, he can barely see his own two hands in front of his face. Panic sets in. He starts screaming his lungs out, begging for someone, anyone to help him, while shoving against the heavy iron door, until it just casually clicks open. Confused as to why a maximum security cell would just be unlocked, this is no standard penitentiary. It looks like a sprawling, chaotic slum. Peering over the edge, he stares down at an endless maze of crumbling, stacked shanties. The entire settlement clings to the walls of a massive, plunging crater. His legs give out completely, dropping him flat on his backside. This cannot be real. There is absolutely no way this hellscape is a government prison. Out of nowhere, 182 slams a rough hand over his mouth, hissing at him to shut the hell up. All that endless wailing is basically a dinner bell for the absolute worst kind of attention. Escaping this place. Yeah, that is a pipe dream. If he wants to keep breathing, he needs to zip it and survive. Dante looks at him like he grew a second head. Survive. In this absolute garbage pile. He is an upstanding citizen, for crying out loud. He does not belong trapped in a pit with society's worst rejects. He is nothing like these animals. Nothing like him. The rant dies in his throat as a massive hulking inmate suddenly towers over them. Dante freezes, eyes glued to the giant's heavily scarred flesh and dead, empty glare. Tears instantly prick Dante's eyes as he stammers out a pathetic apology, swearing his insults were not aimed at him. Meanwhile, 182 calmly shifts his gaze to the looming threat, flatly asking the brute what the hell he is staring at. But before Dante can even blink, the giant swings a massive fist, knocking him down and leaving him stripped to his boxers on the grimy floor. 182 just sighs, reminding the nerd that he warned him to keep quiet. Dante snaps back, blaming the scarred man for the whole mess. Now he is freezing and half naked. Why on earth does he constantly pull these brainless stunts and drag them right into the line of fire? Does he ever use his head? What kind of idiot picks a fight with a mountain of muscle like that? Especially when he is literally missing an entire arm. Without a single word, 182 slowly pushes himself up from the floor. Dante swallows hard. Oh crap, he pushed it way too far this time. The panic spikes into absolute terror when the scarred warrior starts unzipping his own outfit. Dante practically starts crying for forgiveness on the spot, fully convinced that he is about to become the one-armed guy's new prison wife. But rather than doing anything crazy, 182 simply tosses his own uniform right into Dante's face and commands him to gear up. Stunned by the unexpected kindness, Dante catches the fabric. But he is even more shocked by the raw, chiseled physique underneath a hardened canvas of brutal battle scars. He awkwardly shimmies into the rugged fabric, mentally kicking himself to keep his big mouth shut from now on. But as he pulls up the zipper, a terrifying thought strikes him. If he is dressed just like the inmates, how will the rescue squad ever identify him? While 182 quietly digs through his meager stash of gear, he shatters the nerd's last shred of hope. There is no cavalry coming to save the day. Every single guard in their sector was slaughtered. If he wants to keep his head attached to his neck, blending in with the psychopaths is his welcome to the brutal reality of Fogland. Slipping into a much grungier, heavily stained backup suit, the scarred fighter casually mentions that it is time to grab some grub. The mention of food sparks a tiny glimmer of hope in Dante's mind. If it is chow time, there is a solid chance he might spot an actual warden patrolling the inmate sector. Meanwhile, the hulking thief from earlier is practically humming a happy tune. Dante's stolen high-end clothes fit his massive frame perfectly, and those sleek designer glasses, they looked sharp as hell. Maybe he should go back and swipe those too. His greedy daydream is violently interrupted by a chillingly sweet voice, calling him honey, asking where he scored the fresh threads. The giant instantly drops into a deep, terrified bow, desperately explaining that he just ripped them off some weak little nerd wandering around the tofu village. A frail guy with glasses, a brand new arrival. The mysterious boss's eyes light up with a sinister realization. So, that is where his little prize has been hiding. The sweating brute nods eagerly, complaining that the new guy had the absolute nerve to parade around in luxury fabrics. So he just did everyone a favor and confiscated the cute outfit. In a flash of blinding steel, the boss drives a massive blade straight through the giant's skull. The massive body hits the concrete with a sickening thud, dead on impact. Ignoring the fresh splatter of dark red painting his face, the killer just flashes a twisted, giddy grin. The hunt is finally over. He has tracked down their precious little teacher. Cut back to Dante, who is nervously scanning his surroundings. All he sees is a suffocating, brutalist concrete jungle, with shadowy inmates who blend right into the grime, glaring at them with the hollow, predatory eyes of starving wolves. Clenching a rusted steel pipe to his chest, he sticks close to 182's side, seriously questioning if these figures are even human anymore. This cursed pit, this is Fogland. From the outside, it masks itself as a detention center. But deep down in the muck, it is a lawless... He whispers frantically, demanding to know how this place could possibly be a legal jail. Who the hell designed this nightmare? 182 just glances back, tossing out a flat, What? Frustration boils over, making the terrified nerd pointing out the absolute insanity of inmates just strolling around with zero supervision. Half these thugs look completely wasted, and do not even get him started on those 3 sketchy creeps lurking nearby. He desperately wants to know if the cell bars are just for show. He read that Fogland was a highly classified project, funded directly by the United Nations. How in the world did a pristine facility devolve into this apocalyptic hellhole? The scarred fighter instantly shuts him down, growling at him to lower his damn voice. Dante suddenly bites his tongue, realizing his own stupidity. What on earth is he thinking? Why did he actually expect this battle-hardened convict to give him a Is this some twisted form of Stockholm Syndrome? The maniac trailing him is literally his abductor, and those dead, soulless eyes match the rest of the inmates perfectly. The guy is a walking death trap, meaning Dante can't drop his guard for a single second. The unlikely duo eventually shuffles into a sprawling cafeteria known as the Chow Hall. Surprisingly, the convicts are stuffing their faces in absolute peace. Dante grabs a plastic tray, utterly bewildered by the eerie, mundane vibe of the whole room. Glancing past the serving line, his heart skips a beat. Right there, mingling among the vicious criminals, stands an actual uniformed prison guard. Relief crashes over Dante like a tidal wave, stretching his lips. He quickly swallows his excitement, however, and forces his breathing to steady. Right now, wrapped in prison threads, he looks like just another scumbag inmate. He needs to radiate pure, undeniable sanity. He vows after inmate 182 shamelessly begs for extra ham and gets ruthlessly rejected, Dante finally steps up to the counter. He frantically whispers, asking if the man is legitimate security. When the guard gives a slow nod, Dante leans in close, his heart hammering in his chest. He quickly reveals his identity, a civilian science instructor assigned to the inmate education project, taken hostage the moment the prison erupted into chaos. He points out that he was abducted by the masked giant looming right beside him, who is definitely eavesdropping. Surely the officer knows about the massive uprising. If he is somehow clueless, he needs to radio the higher-ups right this second, because a massive search party. Suddenly, a thick string of saliva drips from the guard's gaping mouth. Dante locks onto the man's pupils, only to stare into a hollow, brain-dead void. Before Dante can even process the horror, the gruff cafeteria worker whacks him hard across the skull, barking at him to move his ass if he isn't ordering grub. Dante mechanically, while a random inmate rudely swipes a bite from his plate, Dante just stands there, utterly crushed. What the hell was wrong with that guard's lifeless stare? Was he an imposter, playing dress-up? No, the uniform was absolutely authentic, complete with a shiny official security badge. Yet scanning the massive hall, there isn't a single other officer in sight. Is anyone actually coming to save him? What kind of hellish nightmare has he stumbled into? Deep down in his gut, a terrifying realization claws at him. This entire facility is fundamentally broken. He is catastrophically doomed. If things keep going like this, he will rot in this subterranean cage until the day he dies. Trapped right beside this masked psycho, pivoting, Dante addresses 182 with a fake teacher-like warmth, reminding the giant about his bizarre obsession with sweet potatoes. This is his ultimate, desperate gamble. Dante promises to spill all his agricultural secrets, teaching him every single detail he desires. But the price? The brute has to smuggle Dante to the surface. He plans to completely manipulate the big guy's simple mind. Sadly for Dante, the hulking menace, the giant growls, demanding to know if Dante takes him for a total moron. Panicking, the teacher aggressively waves his hands, denying it instantly. Dante stammers out that the only reason he was kidnapped was for a simple agriculture lesson, wasn't it? Once the knowledge is passed on, Dante's usefulness is fulfilled, meaning he should obviously be allowed to walk free. Inmate 182 stares in a chilling silence. Finally, he mutters a grim truth. The only ticket out of this abyss is claiming the title of Supreme Leader. Dante squints, asking if that is some sort of underground prison kingpin. The brute scoffs bluntly, stating a weakling like Dante wouldn't survive the attempt anyway. Dante has zero desire to play warlord, but the gears in his head turn. Does that mean only the apex predator of this jail gets a direct line to the outside world? Brandishing a cheap plastic fork like a weapon, the giant issues a dark ultimatum. Conquer the hierarchy, or die trying. There are zero alternative exits. Utterly lost, Dante begs the masked man to elaborate, but the giant completely shuts down, thoroughly annoyed by the pathetic interrogation. The grim reality sets in: this freak isn't going to save him. Dante pushes away from the table, realizing he is wasting his breath on a total lunatic. He vows to break out of this disgusting hellhole solo. And when he does, he swears the giant will face the full, unforgiving wrath of the justice system for kidnapping him. Biting his tongue before he screams out loud, Dante simply storms off. A piece of scum like that deserves— Out of nowhere, a booming voice echoes across the chow hall, asking for an instructor. Not just any instructor. It screams. The entire cafeteria freezes. Drunk on the delirious hope of a tactical rescue squad, Dante waves his arms frantically, weeping hot tears as he shrieks his location. He wails, his full profile, Kang Dante, a 32-year-old public school science educator. But the frantic screaming instantly dies in his throat, the absolute second his eyes lock onto the caller. It is a colossal titan, a man built like a 2-story building, sporting a sinister wide grin. The beast purrs that he has been dying to cross paths again. He playfully jogs Dante's memory, reminding the teacher that they are old acquaintances from the sweet potato workshop. Pure, terrified instinct forces Dante to stumble backward. Trembling, he stammers that he remembers perfectly. How could he forget the most gigantic human he had ever witnessed? Around them, the atmosphere shatters. The hardened inmates and tough kitchen staff suddenly start shivering violently, holding their breath in absolute suffocating terror. Because this behemoth isn't just any regular prisoner. He is the Tower, one of the legendary 6 shoulders of the dreaded Cell Zero. And in a flash of pure horror, Dante's mind flashes back to the gruesome bloodbath. He remembers exactly how this smiling monster, the psychotic giant, had literally used a living inmate as a meat shield, casually massacring people while complaining about the officer, seeing as those prison guards were packing serious heat. Right then, Tower shoves his bare hand straight down his own throat and drags out a massive gleaming blade. It is an absolutely mind-blowing stunt. Armed with that grotesque weapon, he instantly waltzes right through the armed squad, their agonizing shrieks serving as his twisted background. Dante absolutely crumbles to the concrete. Utterly broken, he begs to know why this monster is hunting him down. Tower just rummages through his bloody pockets, casually mentioning that they need to resume their lesson. Oh, and he is totally over the whole sweet potato farming gig. It is time to step up to the big leagues like manufacturing fog. The second that glowing mist appears, the surviving convicts gaze at it like it is their holy grail, and this chunk is unbelievably massive. It clicks in Dante's brain. The lunatic who practically smashed through the window earlier demanded the exact same thing. So this pulsing neon blue blob, this is the infamous fog. Dante stammers out asking what the hell he is looking at, completely baffling Tower. He genuinely has zero clue. The giant tightens his grip, refusing to believe it. The guy is a science instructor. How could he be clueless? Aren't educators supposed to be walking encyclopedias? Dante frantically swears he has never witnessed anything like this beyond these prison walls, causing Tower's patience to wear dangerously thin. They endured those boring lectures specifically for this. The entire 6 Shoulders syndicate rallied just to abduct him for the fog. Frustrated, Tower snatches Dante by the collar, deciding his ignorance does not change a damn thing. They can just figure it out together, starting right now. Right? Watching that glowing heartbeat-like mass, in the split second the mysterious substance starts melting against his front teeth, while the surrounding convicts literally drool with sheer desperation. He violently thrashes backward, rejecting the bizarre drug. The instant that blue chunk hits the dirt, every single prisoner watching lunges into a feral dog pile. As Dante watches in pure shock, an absolute bloodbath erupts over the scraps. Tower does not even get angry. He just chuckles, pointing out the obvious chaos. Every living soul in this hellhole craves the fog. It is their ultimate currency, their solid gold, an absolute divine miracle to these inmates. A frail old prisoner manages to swallow a piece, and despite a dozen men trampling and shoving him, he remains standing like a mountain, even as the mob violently bites into his arms, ripping his flesh apart with their bare teeth. The old man just beams with absolute bliss. Tower scoffs at the pathetic desperation of these filthy still acting like rabid beasts over a tiny scrap, means that old-timer is going to experience pure ecstasy for the rest of the day. Or maybe, if he scores a bigger dose, he might even awaken some supernatural ability. Tower leans in, asking if, still tasting the bitter residue scraped against his enamel. Dante starts trembling uncontrollably, before aggressively vomiting his guts out onto the floor. He mentally screams, cursing his own life choices. Why on earth did he accept a job in this nightmare facility? Is he absolutely brain dead? Teary-eyed, he pitifully begs Tower to let him go home, screaming that he wants no part of this madness. He cannot synthesize this bizarre alien drug. He has never encountered anything like it in his... He cries out that he is not some genius scientist, just a normal high school instructor. Tower snaps, ordering him to cut the crap. He literally saw it on a television drama. He watched a totally normal teacher cook up and deal the highest quality product. Dante frantically screams that the guy in the show was a literal chemistry genius. Those are completely different professions. Hell, Dante does not even hold a PhD. He is just an ordinary high school educator. A dead, suffocating silence immediately swallows the cafeteria, shattered only by Tower coldly asking if he is just a worthless failure. The giant had tracked the so-called expert down first. He firmly believed he had hit the jackpot, completely convinced this would make him the undisputed king of the prison. He slowly slides the gruesome blade back out of his own gut, making Dante freeze in pure panic. Tower violently lunges forward, snarling that dead weight has no place in his empire. Hearing that exact insult triggers a crushing wave of childhood trauma, flooding Dante's mind with memories of his father. The old man had branded him pathetic too, just for pursuing a teaching certificate. He loathed the idea of his son babysitting kids, especially since every single member of their elite bloodline held it. Dante was considered the ultimate disgrace to their prestigious name, a pathetic failure who could not pass a single thesis defense in 6 grueling years. His own mother coldly agreed, claiming his career choice was just a cowardly escape, a pathetic excuse to avoid grinding for another academic dissertation. His genius brother sighed and told them to back off arguing. There is no shame in being an educator. They should just let him settle for the bare minimum, since the poor guy was already suffering, enough bombing his doctorate attempts for over half a decade. This toxic perfectionism was his actual family. A father renowned enough to be a celebrity guest on national television, a mother wielding a top-tier doctorate in law, and a prodigy brother who scored a seat in an elite psychological society as a teenager. Dante might have commanded respect in his own classroom, but under his family's roof, he was treated like absolute dirt. During one painfully tense family dinner, Dante slid a recruitment flyer across the table, explaining it was a highly secure United Nations penitentiary. He proudly stated he would be educating the inmates. Backed by the UN, the salary was actually pretty massive. His brother immediately recognized the facility. It was that notorious black site they call Fogland, right? The prodigy smirked, finding it completely badass, since every absolute psychopath gets locked up there. Dante firmly defended the inmates, insisting they were still human beings. His mother just frowned, demanding to know why he would risk his neck out there when she was perfectly fine with his safe, mediocre high school paycheck. Even his old man was totally baffled. Why on earth was he pulling a stunt like this? What was his endgame? Swallowing hard, Dante explained that offering a real education to those who never stood a chance now, that was the true calling of a teacher. Right then, his brother splashed wine down his own shirt, snickering at how ridiculously pretentious that excuse sounded. He scoffed, calling it entirely unprofessional, just a desperate, impulsive cry for validation. It wasn't that he flunked his doctorate. He was just faking this whole noble alternative path routine, playing the righteous savior. That was exactly why he stooped to their level, hiding his own incompetence behind these bizarre, eccentric charity acts. Hitting a nerve, Dante fired back, asking why he was projecting his own twisted mindset onto him. But his brother just brushed it off as sibling concern. He called the whole operation a reckless suicide mission, running off like this just to soothe an inferiority complex. Pure, undeniable stupidity. And standing there now, Dante realized his brother was dead on. He was an absolute idiot. This was a spectacularly terrible idea. His reward. Bleeding out in this filthy, God-forsaken... When it came down to it, the real clown of the family had always been him. But out of nowhere, 182's hood flies back. His hand blurs, launching a crude fork with such terrifying force that it punches straight through Tower's meat hook of an arm. Tower's weapon clatters to the floor as a blood-curdling shriek rips from his lungs. Clutching his shattered limb, he whips around, roaring to know which cowardly bastard sneaked a gun in. Before the echo even fades, 182 closes the distance like a missile. He yanks a massive fistful of Tower's hair, forcing his head down as the entire cell block watches him wind up for a lethal execution. With a sickening crunch, his knee drives flawlessly into the dead center of Tower's spine. He doesn't just crack the bone, he completely pulverizes it. As the massive tyrant collapses like a puppet with cut strings, absolute silence chokes the room. Tower's heavy frame crashes against the unforgiving floor, kicking up dust. Dante can only stare, completely paralyzed. The surrounding inmates immediately realize a new alpha has just claimed the throne. Like scavengers, they trample right over Tower's twitching body, totally forgetting the very monster they were terrified of 3 seconds ago. They clamor to learn their new boss's name, but 182 just shoots Dante a sideways glance, muttering that it is time to bounce, before hauling the stunned teacher up by the collar and dragging him away from the frenzy. Once they finally catch their breath, Dante frantically checks his own pulse, genuinely shocked he survived. His brain had literally already accepted the sweet release of death. He gazes at the quiet inmate, realizing this guy isn't just tough. He is an absolute freak of nature. Finding his voice, he asks if that whole sweet potato sob story was just a load of crap. Why bother showing up to his lecture anyway? Was he trying to manipulate the fog? Tilting his head, 182 blankly asks if the teacher actually knows how to summon fog. Sweating bullets, Dante frantically shakes his head no. He blurts out a million rapid-fire apologies, which only leaves his savior looking up. Deadpan as ever, the inmate reveals his grand master plan. Word on the cell block was that attendees got free new. He had just been wandering the yard, spotted a massive mob blocking the walkway, and heard a rumor about some fancy outsiders dropping by. Someone mentioned an education program. The wait list was brutally cutthroat, so a random guy nudged him to jump in line while he could. At first, 182 could not have cared less about going back to school. But the absolute second that guy mentioned fresh prison threads, he shamelessly shoved his way into the queue, waiting like an obedient. Dante's jaw practically hits the floor. That was his grand motivation. Then why the hell did he risk his life to save him? 182 does not even blink, clarifying that he didn't give a damn about saving the teacher. He was exclusively protecting his brand new outfit. But now he was annoyed, pointing out that Dante never actually taught him a single thing. To make matters worse, the terrified teacher had literally pissed his pants, ruining the pristine fabric. Looking down in pure horror, Dante realized the damp truth. Fast forward past a deeply awkward trip to the communal showers, and violently borrowing some dry clothes from a random, unfortunate. Dante aggressively scrubs the soiled garments in the sink, desperate to make things right. But glancing over, a thought pops into his head. Was that absolutely shredded rag the inmate still wore, holding some deep emotional value? 182 stares at him like he is the most clueless man alive, simply tapping the faded digits stamped on the chest, declaring it belonged to him. Dante obviously knew the guy's serial number, but pressed further, why not just toss the rags into the incinerator? The inmate just shrugs, brutally applying his caveman logic. It says, 182. Therefore, it stays with 182. He points to the damp clothes in Dante's hands, noting his number is on those too, making him the proud owner of both. The teacher massages his temples, completely lost. Did this killing machine have some weird hoarding? Sighing heavily, Dante figures the guy can't exactly scrub fabric with a busted arm anyway, so he voluntarily takes on laundry duty. Once every last drop of grime is wrung out, the bizarre duo heads back to 182's cell to hang it all out to dry. Glancing down at his trembling wrist, Dante checks his watch. The hands have crossed the exact threshold, slapping him with the grim reality that he has officially survived 24 agonizing hours, locked inside. Putting his escape plan on the back burner, those monstrous enforcers known as shoulders are definitely still hunting him down. That massive cafeteria brawl earlier probably painted a giant bullseye, so he's got to break out of this hellhole by tomorrow morning, tops. A fierce growl rips through his empty stomach, making him instantly regret skipping that foul-looking prison sludge. His desperate eyes suddenly lock onto the raw, sweet potato clutched in 182's grip. Just one tiny bite wouldn't hurt, right? It's not like anything can sprout in this wasteland anyway. But the second he reaches for it, 182 viciously slaps his hand away, barking at him to back the hell off. Rubbing his stinging wrist, Dante whines that he's just starving. Can't a guy get a single crumb to survive? Crouching fiercely over his prize, 182 aggressively shuts him down. This spud belongs to him. He even carved his prisoner digits right into the skin. Dante scoffs at the absolute absurdity. Does this brute seriously plan to farm it? Does he even have a clue how? 182 blindly admits he doesn't, but violently threatens to slaughter Dante if his precious potato. Dante is genuinely stunned by the sheer stupidity radiating from this giant. The guy speaks like a toddler and acts like a literal caveman, only separated from a wild beast by a pathetic handful of basic. But honestly, this brainless meathead is the perfect pawn. Flashing a sly grin, Dante leans in. What if that poor little sweet potato is already doomed to rot? Panic flashes across 182's face as he frantically demands to know why. Playing the expert, Dante explains that carving those numbers essentially infected the vegetable. It's a deadly disease called browning. Watching sheer terror flood the giant's eyes, Dante ruthlessly presses his advantage. He casually mentions a secret cure. Sure, their last deal completely crashed and burned, so he probably shouldn't share this, but he'll drop one free hint: the plant desperately craves pure sunlight. And the suffocating mist, choking fogland, completely smothers any chance, so they absolutely have to relocate somewhere with a thinner haze. 182 instantly argues that their current spot, Tofu Village, is the clearest area around. Dante quickly shoots that down. It's nowhere near enough. You can't even dry a damp shirt in this miserable dampness. To save the plant, they have to push all the way to the massive iron gates guarding the fortress, the very threshold of Fogland itself. Cut to a dimly lit hideout where a frantic craftsman is welding together a heavy-duty metal neck brace for Tower. The crime boss is groaning in excruciating agony, demanding to know when this brutal injury will finally heal. His terrified lackey begs him to stay calm, swearing he hired the finest architect in the prison to fix him up. Tower barks back in fury. He specifically ordered him to drag it. Setting that aside, the boss is still reeling from the impossible. He spent years absorbing the fog's dark power, turning his spine into something infinitely tougher than solid steel rebar. His neck was practically invincible. Yet one single explosive strike completely pulverized it. That worthless old teacher is a lost cause now. His new target is strictly that cocky punk, because the kid is definitely hoarding an insane amount of pure fog. Out of nowhere, a chillingly familiar voice echoes through the shadows, mocking him for actually tracking down the old master. It's the same deranged psychopath who ambushed Dante earlier. He slipped right past the guards like a ghost, casually ignoring their sudden panicked reactions. A wicked smirk stretches across his face as he laughs at Tower's violently snapped neck. Tower glares daggers at the intruder, furious that this rat scurried into his private sanctuary. But the smirking madman simply shrugs, reminding him about their little ironclad. Wasn't the deal to split the ultimate prize if either of them dug up the teacher? Tower snaps at him to shut his delusional mouth. He's the only one destined to rule this wasteland as the supreme king. Without missing a beat, the unhinged invader snatches the heavy steel hammer straight from the trembling architect's grip. He coldly whispers that Tower's pathetic little talent could never back up such a gigantic ego. Panic suddenly floods Tower's eyes as he screams at him to hold on. He wouldn't actually butcher a crippled man, right? That's just straight-up cowardice. The psycho completely tunes out the pathetic begging. Whenever he crosses paths with greedy scum like him, his hands just itch to brutally smash them into red paste. With a vicious swing, he buries the hammer directly into Tower's shattered spine. This bloodthirsty monster is Hound, the absolute deadliest shoulder of Section 0. After mercilessly pummeling every single thug in the room into unconsciousness, Hound wipes the blood off, turning to his savage biker gang to announce their next hunting ground, Tofu Village. Engines roar to life as the ruthless crew mounts up and speeds off, tearing through the suffocating misty alleys of the sprawling penitentiary. Meanwhile, back with our unlikely duo, Dante stares at the massive sack slung over 182's back, burning with curiosity. That thing looks seriously heavy. 182 defensively grunts that it's his personal stash, pointing out Dante never even bothered to ask his real name. Dante realizes his slip-up and asks. The giant bluntly states that everyone in this hellhole just calls him One Arm. Dante blinks in pure confusion. Doesn't he have an actual birth name? The towering brute stubbornly repeats that One Arm is his only title. Dante rolls his eyes at how incredibly barbaric that sounds, deciding he'll just stick with calling him 182. Squinting at his bizarre getup, Dante throws out one last jab. Why hide behind that creepy mask anyway? Is he secretly some kind of burglar? So how did Dante even wind up trapped in the nightmare of Fogland Well 182? coldly brushes him off, claiming he's been here from the very beginning. That cryptic answer just leaves Dante scratching his head. But the masked guy, he's already sick and tired of the endless and he snaps, demanding to know why a so-called teacher is asking so many damn questions. Dante fires right back, reminding the brute that he's still human. But 182 isn't having it. He growls that Dante babbles way too much, and his grating voice is giving. After that tense exchange, a heavy silence falls over them as they trudge forward. That is until Dante collapses right onto the dirt, begging for a breather. His stomach is growling, and his energy gauge is hitting dead zero. Gasping for air, he wonders aloud just how much farther they have to drag. They've been wandering aimlessly for 2 solid hours, yet the exact same dreary landscape keeps looping like a broken record. Then 182 drops a bombshell. He has absolutely no clue where they're going. Dante explodes. Why wait until now to spit that out? Did they just waste 2 grueling hours walking in circles for absolutely nothing? This is pure insanity. Thoroughly defeated, Dante flops backward into the dust. He gives his captor an ultimatum: either haul him on his back or scrounge up some grub if he actually wants to save his precious sweet potato. Out of nowhere, 182 faceplants hard into the ground. Panic surging, Dante scrambles to his feet to check the big guy out, quickly realizing he's severely dehydrated. He frantically shakes the giant, terrified that some unseen danger just struck him down. But honestly, the real fear clawing at his chest is the terrifying reality of being stranded. Desperation takes over as he violently shakes 182's limp body, begging, screaming at the top of his lungs, for him to just wake the hell. Suddenly a stranger drops from the sky, landing with a heavy thud right behind him. As Dante spins around, the guy lunges, prying Dante's eyelids wide open to inspect his pupils. The stranger blinks in surprise, realizing Dante is completely normal. He quickly apologizes for the aggressive greeting, explaining that a massive commotion drew his attention. He was just poking around to see what the chaos was about. Soon after, Dante and the unconscious 182 get dragged to what loosely resembles a run-down apartment complex. They hand Dante a warm meal, and he practically inhales it like a starving animal. A second figure in the room chuckles, warning him to slow down before he makes himself sick. They reassure him to take his time, promising there's plenty more food in the back. Swallowing hard, Dante pours out his gratitude for the life-saving meal. Internally, his mind is reeling. He never imagined running into sane, everyday people in a wasteland like this. The cheerful guy introduces himself as Rambutan and points to his companion Lychee. Dante offers his own name, confessing that this is the absolute first time since he arrived that he's been able to hold a regular, normal conversation without fearing. He blurts out his shock at seeing a woman out here too. Lychee wraps an arm around Rambutan, playfully asking if her disguise really failed that badly. She actually chopped off her hair to pass as a guy, since sticking out as a woman in this brutal place is practically a death sentence. Rambutan chimes in, explaining that they migrated from the inner zones. Apparently, the deeper you push into the core of this place, the whole rigid system of divided blocks just completely crumbles. Piqued, Dante leans in. Are the central zones packed with rational folks just like them? Rambutan shakes his head. Not exactly. But he admits that Tofu Village is essentially a dumping ground for the weaklings who get shoved out of the main struggle. He squints at Dante. Is he fresh meat or just untouched by the fog? Dante quickly corrects him. He's no prisoner. The full story is a massive headache, tangled up in a whole mess of bizarre circumstances. The short version: he was literally abducted by the hulking giant, currently passed out on their floor. Rambutan raises an eye, asking if he seriously means he was smuggled straight into Fogland. A light bulb goes off. He guesses Dante must be a victim of that infamous teacher-snatching scheme. Dante rubs the back of his neck, sheepishly, asking how on earth they know about his kidnapping. Rambutan scoffs. It's an open secret. Everyone knows the top enforcers orchestrated the whole plot beforehand. They even hijacked the system to ensure no one else could show up for lectures. The missing puzzle pieces snap into place for Dante, but that begs the question: what the hell were those useless morons in administration doing while this went down? Rambutan chuckles, amazed that he's actually sitting across from the star of that massive scandal. Hesitant but desperate, Dante decides to push his luck, bluntly asking if Rambutan is secretly a spy working for those same enforcers. Rambutan waves off the accusation with a laugh. Curious Lychee peers at the unconscious brute, noting she's never seen an enforcer look quite so pathetic. Dante sighs, admitting he seriously doubts the guy holds any real rank. Get this, the masked giant kidnapped him solely for farming tips on growing a single sweet potato. Rambutan bursts into uncontrollable laughter. That is quite literally the most absurd reason he could have ever imagined. Honestly, Dante doesn't even take offense at their roaring laughter. His whole life has spiraled into a twisted dark comedy anyway. Their chuckles feel bizarrely comforting, like raw sympathy. Catching sight of the tears welling in Dante's eyes, Rambutan abruptly and gently asks if the giant is keeping him hostage. Dante shakes his head. At this point, the brute is basically just tagging along as his makeshift, heavily armed bodyguard. He figures the big guy just caught a nasty case of heat stroke before passing out. But Lychee shakes her head gravely. That's no heat stroke, it's limbo. A brutal, agonizing withdrawal from the fog. He had likely noticed the lifeless bodies littering the streets in every direction. Deprived of their precious fog, those poor souls had slipped straight into limbo. Sure, they might eventually snap back to reality. But if that vicious cycle of withdrawal keeps repeating, their brains simply melt into absolute mush. Dante frowns, thoroughly bewildered. What exactly is this fog anyway? The pair exchange a knowing glance, and Rambutan chuckles, pointing out that the rookie truly has no clue how this hellhole operates. Fog, he explains, is a miraculous elixir that awakens hidden talents. It drastically magnifies abilities a person never realized they possessed, or fiercely grants the skills they desperately crave. Dante stammers, struggling to believe such absolute magic exists, but Rambutan swiftly cuts him off. Not only is it entirely real, it shatters the very boundaries of human potential. Fueled by that exact overwhelming power, they are finally going to smash their way out of this hellish prison. Dante simply stares at the duo, completely paralyzed by a heavy mix of pure awe. Meanwhile, Hound kicks open the door to cell 182, only to find the damp room totally abandoned. He sneers. The runaways could not have fled too far. But he desperately needs to pick up the pace. After all, the rest of the twisted hunting pack is undoubtedly sniffing around for the boy right now. Ruthless freaks like Bone-Eater Nun Face Fuzzy Back and Drillhead. Back in the shadows, Rambutan and Lychee extend an invitation for Dante to join their daring escape. He instinctively nods, but abruptly halts his own momentum. While he deeply values their lifeline, he insists that as an innocent civilian, his main priority has to be contacting the guards or the operating bureau. If he recklessly tags along with a bunch of fugitive convicts, he will be permanently branded as a criminal, and that is assuming their crazy plan actually works. If they fail well, he would instantly become a corpse, so prison time would be the least of his worries. Rambutan crushes his naive hopes instantly. He blatantly warns the kid that he will never, ever cross paths with the Bureau or any rescue squad down, because no sane outsider dares to set foot inside Fogland. The sheer terror of addiction keeps everyone away. One single misstep into this, and a person becomes hopelessly bound to the fog for survival. That grim fate already applies to Dante as well. The boy defensively argues back, swearing he has never inhaled the stuff, and certainly refuses to start. Rambutan shoots him a pitiless glare, brutally stating that his personal choices do not. He has been rotting in this pit for what, 2 or 3 days already? Has he ever paused to consider the thick, suffocating mist drifting through the corridors? That exact mist is packed with concentrated fog particles, the very narcotic poison he has been desperately avoiding. Yes, the substance is a godly miracle that unlocks insane abilities, and to fully activate those hidden powers, a massive dose is required. However, simply getting hooked is tragically easy. Just breathing the contaminated air seals the deal. The sinister mist has already been silently creeping into his lungs, plunging his body into an endless, agonizing craving for more. If he fails to secure his next hit, he will inevitably crash hard into limbo. Dante swallows hard, his heart pounding. Is he secretly hooked already? Is his fate completely sealed? Rambutan gives him a grim nod, admitting the terrifying possibility. That zombified limbo state is merely the opening phase of the nightmare. It becomes a complete gamble, since every individual handles the... He cannot pinpoint exactly when Dante will crack, but the ticking clock leaves zero room for hesitation. Dante groans, laying out the crushing reality. Even if they miraculously break out, their lives are ruined by the irreversible addiction. Lychee somberly nods her head, acknowledging the horrific truth. Yet she fiercely adds that despite all of that, no prisoner has ever made it out of these cursed walls breathing. Perhaps centuries from now, some miraculous natural healing could occur, or if they manage to expose this hellish underground facility to the world, scientists might actually synthesize a cure. But right now, their only absolute vow is to survive this prison, a blazing sentiment that Rambutan firmly echoes. Even if they eventually succumb to limbo and completely erase one another from their memories, they will still be breathing free air under the exact same sky. Dante clicks his tongue at the dramatic speech, yet he cannot deny the intense, raw sincerity radiating from their eyes. These two renegades are dead serious about tearing this place apart. Suddenly, a shuffling noise breaks the tension cellmate. 182 jolts awake, instantly drawing all eyes to. The group stares at the sluggish man, as if a ghost just materialized. Dante clenches his jaw, frantic about their next move, knowing he absolutely cannot afford to waste precious seconds babysitting. If he openly confesses his plan to run off with these dangerous mutants, will the crazy guy snap and attack him? What if this unpredictable zombie massacres them all, just like that poor sod earlier? Breaking the tense silence, 182 sluggishly presents his beloved sweet potato and weakly mumbles, asking if the coast is finally clear. Rambutan scoffs loudly, questioning why the kid is shaking in his boots. The pathetic man is nothing more than a brain-dead fog zombie. Once these junkies hit limbo, their muscles basically turn to wet paper until their next fix, meaning Dante could effortlessly crush him in a fight. A massive wave of relief washes over the boy. He had been silently terrified of a violent bloodbath. Smirking, Rambutan assures him there is zero threat. If this creep is bothering you, though, why don't we just stomp his lights out right now? The mutant offers coldly. A deadly stillness falls over the group, but Dante quickly throws his hands up, desperately ordering Rambutan to back off and spare the harmless fool. Slowly crouching down to meet the hollow eyes of the addict, Dante gently explains that he is breaking out tonight. He absolutely refuses to rot away in this, so it is finally time they part ways forever. Blinking blankly, 182 just whimpers about his precious sweet potato. Sighing, Dante gently snatches the dirt-covered vegetable, drops it into a small cup splashed with water, and places it safely back into the trembling man's hands. The little roots will sprout all on their own. But for it to truly thrive, it desperately needs warm sunlight, so the man has to go seek out the surface himself. 182 whines that he is completely lost in the dark, but Dante simply turns his back, cutting off his last shred of sympathy. He firmly signals Rambutan to shoo the pathetic guy away, cementing his ultimate choice. He doesn't care if a bullet finds his skull, or if he gets dragged back in chains. 182 is violently tossed into the dirt, clutching nothing but a battered cup and a single sweet potato. He just stares at it, lost in thought. A ghost from his past drifts into his mind. He remembers a little girl's voice from his childhood, softly asking if he knew what a puppy or a kitten was. She described them as animals like crows, but covered in warm, fluffy fur. If you raised one, she said it would actually listen to you, understand your words, and stay by your side. Gently ruffling his hair, she whispered a promise the moment she finally saw the outside world. She was going to raise one herself. Clinging to that fragile memory, 182 tightens his grip on the potato. He absolutely refuses to let go this time. Meanwhile, in another corner of this nightmare, a group of inmates is carefully measuring something. The verdict. The massive entity shifted exactly 20 centimeters, and the subject of their terrifying study, a grotesque demonic monstrosity currently clutching a severed human leg in its third arm. Clearly, some poor fool thought they could actually break out of here. Back inside the hideout, Dante presses his palm against the cold concrete. How exactly are we supposed to bust out of this place? He asks. Rambutan just drops into a low crouch, a smirk playing on his lips. Let me show you. Dante watches intently as pure crackling energy suddenly surges through Rambutan's calves. Boom, he rockets upward, violently smashing straight through the ceiling in a shower of debris. Dante flinches back in absolute shock. What the hell was that? Lychee calmly dusts herself off, explaining that Rambutan possesses a freakish, So the Grand Master plan, just leap right over the prison walls. They scramble up to a higher vantage point, where Lychee lightly taps a glowing bead on her forehead. Instantly, her eyes flare with an intense, blinding light. Right before their eyes, she projects a massive, intricate map of the penitentiary. Dante is utterly speechless. She has the insane ability to flawlessly reconstruct anything she's seen, even once perfectly mimicking a photograph. Is this the entirety of Fogland? Not even close. She clarifies that this is just the route she took from the inner sector. What they are looking at is merely a tiny fraction of the facility. Dante's mind races, thoroughly stunned. If this sprawling labyrinth is just a piece of the puzzle, just how Lechi doesn't miss a beat, continuing her brief. She points out that since Tofu Village is relatively small, they've covered serious ground. They should be hitting the perimeter any second now. Dante snatches up her pencil, quickly pointing out a glaring omission she completely left out: the 4 dangerous drifters lurking in this sector. Lechi snatches the pencil right back, annoyed. Why would I bother drawing them? Dante just wanted to plot out any lethal threats. He taps a mysterious red marker on the projection. I'm guessing this red zone is another threat, but what exactly is it? Lechi and Rambutan exchange a heavy, silent glance. Rambutan shrugs it off. We're breaking out of this dump in a minute anyway, so it doesn't matter. He barks at Lechi for the coordinates. The second she gives the signal, he violently scoops them both up and launches into the air. Deep in a pitch-black alley, a pack of starving inmates huddle together, utterly deprived of fog and food. Out of nowhere, a shadow steps up. Hey, you guys got any fog? Every head snaps up, glaring at this suicidal idiot. 182 doesn't flinch, repeating his demand. The inmates sneer. Do they look like they're hiding a stash? Unfazed. 182 steps closer. Empty your damn pockets. A massive brute instantly backhands him across the jaw. The hell did you just say to me, punk? They are literally rotting from starvation, and this brat has the nerve to shake them down. A scrawny prisoner licks his dry lips. Why don't we just eat him? The rumor goes that you can extract fog straight from human flesh. That's exactly how those psychotic bone-eaters survive. The rest of the crew goes dead silent, exchanging hungry looks. Cannibalism. Sure, they're starving, but carving up a kid crosses a line. Besides, the slop trough opens soon anyway. But the skinny psycho isn't listening. He aims a rusted spoon right at 182's chest. Where do we carve first? Maybe we slice his throat and drink him dry. Before he can make a move, a colossal hand swats him out of the air like a fly, sending him crashing into the wall. It's Hound. The impact was so brutal, it shattered the scavenger's eardrums. Trembling, the rest of the pack slowly recognizes the towering giant casting a shadow over them. Hound. Pure panic sets in. They scatter like roaches, absolutely terrified, to breathe the same air as a heavy hitter of his rank. Hound ignores the fleeing cowards and crouches down to 182's eye level. A wicked grin stretches across his scarred face. Found you. Flashback to the day Dante the teacher was abducted. The entire cell block was tearing itself apart in a massive riot. Amidst the chaos, Hound violently shattered the reinforced glass protecting Dante, snatching the teacher right out of his sanctuary. He booked it down the corridor, thoroughly convinced he'd scored the ultimate prize. Those brainless thugs were too busy slaughtering each other to realize the prize was already gone. Plus he had a bloody score to settle. That arrogant bastard from the tower actually used Hound's crewmate as a human shield, completely trashing their alliance. Retribution was going to be merciless and fast. But mid-sprint, the hairs on his neck stood up. Someone was tailing him. He whipped around, glaring at the shadow. Whose crew are you running with? Sizing up the kid's desperate glare, he figured he was either an eater or a drillhead lackey. But then, his eyes locked onto the single sweet potato gripped tightly in the boy's hand. 182 nonchalantly questioned if he was also planning on cultivating some sweet potatoes. Baffled Hound barked back, asking what the hell he was rambling about, prompting 182 to suggest checking with the teacher. Naturally, Hound lost his temper. His blood was already boiling over the grim fate of his crew. Clenching his fist, he exploded forward with terrifying speed, fully intending to tear the kid's head off with a single brutal swing. But right before the lethal blow could connect 182, casually sidestepped, curled 2 fingers on the very hand clutching the potato, and delivered a devastating counterstrike right to Hound's core. The jab was laser-focused on his vital organs, and it clearly hit the mark. Hound crumpled to the dirt, completely paralyzed and gasping for air, as 182 casually snagged the teacher. Suddenly, did he take good care of him? Hound viciously rips off the kid's mask, exposing the grim reality that 182 is actually still trapped in a hazy. What a pathetic sight. Hound aggressively asks again if he's holding any fog before dragging his captive all the way back to his hideout. The casualty from the teacher snatching fiasco was his right-hand man, D-Dot, honored with a makeshift shrine where they poured out liquor in his memory. Just a few feet away from that memorial, a gang of his thugs systematically snap every single finger on 182's hand. Yet the prisoner doesn't even flinch or utter a single agonizing scream. The goons mockingly ask if he plans on using his toes as utensils from now on. If not, he better spit out that damn teacher's location. Still entirely unfazed, 182 parrots his previous demand. Fork over some fog, and he'll gladly start talking. One of the sadistic torturers scoffs, wondering just how long this tough guy act can last, ordering his buddy to crack another bone. Too bad he's already shattered all 5 on that hand, meaning it's time. Stepping up as Hound's new second-in-command, Slick questions if the stubborn bastard might just be getting numb to the agony. At this point, they should honestly just toss him a single hit of fog, since this brutal interrogation is dragging nowhere. Hound shoots the idea down instantly, ordering them to never give that freak a single drop. Slick genuinely wonders what makes this captive so terrifying. There's no way a scrawny little runt like him poses a real threat. Hound fires back, asking if all he sees is a frail kid. His physique has been conditioned to absolute terrifying perfection. Right now, his body fat has to be sitting dangerously below 5%. A nearby lackey lifting weights chimes in, admiring how insanely shredded the kid is. But Slick argues that being that lean is a massive disadvantage. A fighter needs some decent padding if they want to absorb heavy blows. Hound gravely points out that the kid likely can't even feel pain anymore, considering his complete lack of reaction to their relentless torture. Changing the subject, Slick warns that the rival shoulders are already making moves as well. The critical intel that the teacher is hiding out in Tofu Village has hit the streets. If that precious teacher slips into the hands of another shoulder, their entire crew is completely screwed. He recklessly shattered their truce before Didad even drew his last breath. And the more Slick dwells on it, assassinating Tower was a massive blunder too. Hound aggressively cuts him off, insisting it wasn't a mistake at all. For anyone who dares to cross their brothers, nothing but a brutal slaughter awaits. He barks at Slick to stop acting like a spineless coward. Backtracking quickly, Slick stammers that with a little more thought, that's exactly the point he was trying to make. They desperately need to stockpile fog, since that's what Didat would have wanted. He wouldn't want them mourning like a bunch of losers. Without warning, Hound violently smashes his massive fist onto the table and snatches up his liquor glass. He swears they'll never let Didat's sacrifice be meaningless. In his honor, they will absolutely claw their way to the top. He loudly toasts to their fallen brother, prompting the entire crew to roar in agreement. But suddenly, Hound violently spews out his drink, collapsing onto the floor in sheer agony. His panicked crew swarms him, desperately asking if he's all right, but Hound brushes them off, gritting his teeth and claiming he's simply choked. But that's a blatant lie. Back when 182 countered him, the kid had lethally pierced his ribs with terrifying precision. The guy is absolutely positive he ruptured his freaking liver. Chucking a crumpled can straight at the dude's skull, he snarls that the disguise might trick the clueless masses, but not him. That stunt, earlier pure calculated technique, zero luck involved. Out here in the brutal wastelands of Fogland, where thugs rely solely on raw fog energy to instigate bloody brawls, real combats, that flawless takedown was pure Krav Maga, right? Couple that with those heavy-duty steel-toed boots, and it screams ex-military. Fast forward, Dante's crew finally approaches a massive iron gate. His eyes widen with raw hope, utterly convinced they just struck the ultimate escape route. But before he can sprint toward freedom, Rambutan violently yanks him back. He snaps at Dante to freeze, pointing out the menacing watchtower looming overhead. Dante squints, questioning if a sniper is actually lurking up there, but Rambutan grimly admits they can't risk finding out the hard way. Desperate Dante suggests making a solo dash for it to test the waters. Lychee scoffs, demanding to know what a lone, unarmed guy plans to accomplish. Politely ring the doorbell. Out of nowhere, a bizarre head erupts from the dirt, casually warning that the guards will blow him to pieces. One step too close to that barricade, and it's raining lead. Lychee nods in realization until it suddenly clicks. This subterranean freak shouldn't even be here. Dante stares in total bewilderment, asking if he's looking at a living, breathing sweet potato. As Drillhead instantly boils over with rage at the vegetable insult, memory hits Dante like a freight train. This weirdo was actually sitting right in his classroom during the initial disaster. Rambutan aggressively shoves himself between them, recognizing the buried man's dangerous military aura. Dante struggles to swallow this absurd reality, completely distracted by the guy's ridiculously cone-shaped skull. Without warning, a squad rocking orange traffic cones swarms the perimeter, boxing them into a tight corner. Launching out of his dirt crater, Drillhead fiercely declares himself the undisputed heir to the Supreme Leader throne. He lunges straight for Dante, desperate to extract the teacher's precious intellect. Just before he makes contact, Rambutan unleashes a devastating roundhouse kick, planting his heel. He growls that the teacher stays with his crew. Drillhead's flunkies catch their stumbling boss. Clutching his bruised jaw, the mutant demands to know who dares strike him. Eyes blazing, Rambutan warns the freak to back the hell off, claiming he staked his territory on this guy first. Drillhead lets out a raspy chuckle, mocking Rambutan for waltzing in like a stray flea-bitten dog. The mutant sneers, astounded by the brawler's sheer lack of survival. In a bizarre flex, the cone-headed freak strikes a ballerina pose and whips into a dizzying pirouette, violently distorting the air pressure. Dante just blinks, dumbfounded by the aggressive ballet routine. The elegance drops instantly. Drillhead morphs into a human tornado, boring down into the soil and rocketing toward them like a subterranean missile. Bursting from the earth right at Dante's spine, he completely blindsides the teacher. Yet, split seconds before the mutant can strike, Rambutan viciously stomps down, barely missing as the human drill retreats into the dirt. Burrowing a network of treacherous craters, the villain taunts Rambutan's sluggish reflexes. While Dante cowers paralyzed by sheer terror, Rambutan frantically hunts the shifting ground for his enemy, finally spotting a fatal blind spot. Drillhead launches out of the shadows, ramming his razor-sharp cranium directly into Rambutan's spine. The brutal impact launches the fighter into a solid brick wall. Witnessing her beloved crash down, Li Chi shrieks in absolute horror, her voice undeniably feminine. The entire battlefield freezes. Drillhead's goons snap to attention, violently ripping the heavy jumpsuit from her trembling frame, exposing her hidden gender to the bloodthirsty mob. As filthy hands aggressively grab at her, a sickening cocktail of dread and overwhelming guilt paralyzes Dante. He knows this nightmare is entirely his fault. But then, a red-hot fury overrides his cowardice. Snatching a jagged stone from the dirt, he violently hurls it right at the scumbag manhandling Li Chi, cracking the thug directly against the skull. The sudden retaliation leaves the gang, leaving even Li Chi wide-eyed. But Dante totally snaps, raining down a relentless, chaotic barrage of heavy rubble. His frantic aim is so wild, he actually grazes Li Chi, forcing her to lunge forward and desperately clamp down on his wrist. She screams at him to snap out of it. Regaining his senses, Dante bolts alongside her. Watching them flee, Drillhead sinisterly smirks, noting the captive woman's undeniable beauty. He immediately locks eyes with the battered Rambutan, coldly calculating the fighter's next move. In a split second, both powerhouses explode into a furious sprint after the fleeing duo. Total chaos erupts. Rambutan aggressively secures Li Chi to protect her, leaving Dante wide open for Drillhead to snatch him up and drag him screaming into the dark depths of the earth. His grim fate is sealed. Cutting over to a murky hideout, Hound interrogates his crew, questioning if the captured prey is regular infantry or elite black ops. The scarred boss reminisces about his own bloody past, recalling his days as a ruthless veteran, surviving long before he got dragged into the hellscape of Fogland anyway. Pushing himself up, he casually orders Slick to pulverize the new prisoner until he's clinging to his last breath. He strictly demands a brutal endurance test, 0 fog powers allowed. With that sadistic command hanging in the air, Hound fades into the Slick grinds his teeth, visibly irritated by the gruesome chore. A nearby lackey chimes in, offering to team up and tenderize the guy if Slick isn't up for it. Slick harshly orders the grunt to shut his mouth. He spits on the ground, furiously muttering that Hound is a reckless, incompetent scumbag who possesses 0 leadership skills. Honestly, the one getting beaten to a pulp. Whoever claims the title of Supreme Leader, well, he implies that with a massive surge of fog, the playing field is wide open. Anyone could seize the throne. Take Inko, for instance. His artistic flair gives him a bizarre edge. He possesses the raw makings of an apex ruler. Hell, even a meathead like Bulk, despite severely lacking brainpower, harbors untapped potential. When Bulk questions his ambitions, Slick just smirks, bragging that his own intellect has been skyrocketing lately. a little sharper with every sunrise. He wakes up realizing just how utterly brain-dead Hound really is, relying on pure brute force to climb the ranks. That caveman mentality is dead. We are living in an era dominated by sheer intellect, the only true currency of power out here. Bulk bluntly demands his next move. Slick lays out his master plan: pinpoint the teacher's exact location, and keep that crucial intel entirely hidden from Hound. The rest of the gang, they will just have to pick their sides and choose a leader. Bending down over 182, he taunts the desperate guy, asking if he craves it that badly. He pinches a single glowing droplet of fog between his fingers, teasing that he might just hand it over. Meanwhile, deep down in the grime, Dante crashes into the gutters, right alongside Drillhead, who is beaming with an eerily cheerful grin. The brute eagerly welcomes Dante to his twisted subterranean empire. Back above, Slick playfully tosses the bead into his own mouth, declaring that the price for this treasure is absolute loyalty. Plus, he must cough up whatever he knows about the teacher. To mock him further, Slick provocatively rolls the mist on his tongue, warning him to think carefully, since golden opportunities like this never strike twice. But the exact second the bead slips down his throat, 182 materializes in a blur of motion and ruthlessly tears Slick's throat wide open. Plunging his bloody hand in, he physically rips the fog straight from the man's torn gullet. The gruesome spectacle unfolds so fast that the bystanders are utterly paralyzed, only snapping to reality when Slick's lifeless body collapses backward, leaving a gaping bloody hole where his neck used to be. Panicking, they rush to his side, desperately checking for a pulse. But their dread multiplies as a sickening string of bone-cracking pops echoes out. 182 is nonchalantly snapping his dislocated fingers back into joint. He glares at the survivors, his eyes radiating a demonic, hellish fury. Far beneath the surface, Dante nervously hopes that Rambutan and Lychee managed to slip away. They definitely bolted by now, ditching him in the dust. Frankly, they had zero obligation to stick their necks out, so he gets it. Oh well, he is totally cooked regardless. Drillhead leans in with a manic smile, demanding to know if Dante genuinely possesses the power to conjure fog. The goons over at Tofu Village were spreading insane rumors, claiming the mysterious teacher materialized mist out of thin air, devoured it, and effortlessly snapped Tower's neck. Dante internally panics, bewildered by how such an absurd myth even started. Drillhead presses hard for the truth. Every fiber of Dante's being wants to scream, no, but remembering the brutal fate that awaited him the last time he was deemed utterly worthless, he swallows his fear and plays along. He confidently brags that he summoned a massive cloud, ingested it, and made Tower crumble like a flimsy puppet. But Drillhead instantly calls his bluff, growling at him to cut the crap. He isn't some gullible idiot like the rest of them. He flat out refuses to swallow the supernatural garbage that a mere science teacher can spawn fog. He operates on hard facts, not some mystical fairy tales. Dante just sweats totally lost when it comes to these bizarre wasteland legends. In his mind, if nobody possesses the formula to create it, the vapor shouldn't even exist. Drillhead then drops a bombshell. This mist was never crafted by human hands. It randomly descended from the heavens one fateful day. A sudden realization hits Dante as he recalls the ancient tale of a massive meteorite crashing into this barren wasteland. Could that cosmic impact be the true origin of the fog, the mysterious fuel granting these monstrous inmates their power? Drillhead grimly adds that after 5 decades of consumption, whispers are circulating that the supply is running dangerously dry. A brutal judgment day is rapidly approaching. It finally clicks for Dante this power is a finite resource. Drillhead nods, confirming the grim reality. As the reserves dwindle, the inmates are tearing each other apart for scraps caught in a vicious cycle of consumption. Suddenly, the boss barks an order, demanding his goons haul something out. They drag out a stark, naked, lifeless corpse. Drillhead nonchalantly reveals this poor soul perished shortly after absorbing the vapor. Now the twisted leader has a sick experiment in mind. Is there a way to extract the potent mist straight from the dead man's veins? Strictly in the name of science, naturally. Horrified Dante stammers, demanding to know what kind of madness he's plotting. Drillhead decides to dumb it down. He wildly gestures, mimicking a high-speed 3D rotating contraption. Dante arches an eyebrow, asking if the lunatic means a laboratory centrifuge. Drillhead snaps his fingers in agreement. He theorizes that addicts who consumed massive doses must have their bloodstream absolutely saturated with the stuff. Disgusted, Dante asks if he's seriously expected to wring out a mangled cadaver like a wet sponge. If all he needs is a dense concentration of vapor, shouldn't he just flare his nostrils and inhale the surrounding air? The mist is literally floating everywhere. In a flash, Drillhead violently chokeslams him, snarling at him to shut his mouth. If inhaling ambient air was enough, nobody would be dying for this precious resource. You can't just passively breathe. You have to violently harvest and aggressively compress it. Choking for breath, Dante suddenly pieces the atmospheric puzzle together as he visualizes the blazing mornings. The lingering mist, he mentally calculates, is nothing more than basic water vapor hitting its absolute dew point. Because its core structure is simply H2O, he can extract limitless power through basic condensation, provided the temperature hits that perfect sweet spot. He breaks it down for Drillhead, explaining that, armed with the proper gear, they can force a state shift, siphoning out both fresh water and the precious fog the boss is dying to get his hands on. Meanwhile, Hound strolls back in, casually suggesting they grab breakfast, only to freeze. His entire sanctuary is reduced to rubble, the floors painted with the blood of his slaughtered crew. Thick red veins instantly spiderweb across the whites of his eyes, and he unleashes a guttural roar, completely consumed by blinding rage and sheer. Over at the mess hall, 182 marches in. His shattered hand is swollen dangerously, pulsing with a deep red inflammation. Shoving past the crowd, he demands just one thing: water. The food server barks at him to wait his turn, and the surrounding inmates echo the command, telling him to get back in line, since those are the rules of the house. Without warning, 182 brutally slams his already crushed fist right onto the serving counter, growling his demand for water a second time. Terrified, they hand over a cup, and he immediately drops his potato straight into the liquid, along with it. Taking a seat, he remains perfectly still, eyes locked unblinking onto the cup. Far away from that tension, Dante actually pulls it off successfully, wringing fog-laced water from a simple scrap of fabric. He throws his hands up in victory, entirely convinced of his own unmatched brilliance. He feels totally untouchable now. Back in the cafeteria, 182 keeps glaring at the submerged potato, yet absolutely nothing sprouts. Realizing he was played for a fool, his mind is made up. The teacher has to die. Elsewhere, Rambutan and Lychee are busy gathering intel. They stumble upon a rather harmless-looking inmate, pitching the idea of a joint breakout, insisting that a clear escape route absolutely exists. The gentle-faced guy tilts his head in apparent confusion, before suddenly flashing a wicked combat blade and snarling at them to back off. Strolling away from the hostile encounter, Lychee points out that, regardless of how clueless or soft an inmate might appear, there are absolutely no innocents in this hellhole. Not a single soul here is ignorant to how things really work. Rambutan figures Dante might literally be the only clueless one left, while pointing out that Drillhead's territory is fully marked on her custom map. We then cut back to the contraption. It is a fog catcher, a clever piece of engineering designed to rip hydration straight from thin air, typically used across parched deserts and brutally dry climates. The core mechanics are surprisingly basic. Airborne vapor naturally forms into heavy condensation the second morning temperatures hit the dew point. As the surrounding air rapidly cools down, floating mist gets snagged along a fine mesh surface, eventually pooling into drinkable liquid. If you swap out the standard netting for a highly porous bug screen, then contour the base to directly funnel the fresh dew down into a catch basin. The resulting harvest is guaranteed to be heavily infused with the drug. Peering into the basin, Drillhead questions what exactly this murky liquid is, prompting Dante to explain that it is a brew distilled straight from Fogland's purest mist. The boss cautiously dips a finger into the pool and touches it to his tongue. Instantly, his pupils dilate massively. It is the real deal. The entire gang erupts into a wild, euphoric dance, realizing they just secured a literal, infinite supply of their favorite substance. They hoist Dante up, tossing him toward the ceiling, worshipping him as their brilliant master. Shortly after the chaotic celebration, Dante gets a total wardrobe overhaul, sporting a razor-sharp makeshift suit complete with a tie. Drillhead comments that while he clearly has the vibe of a corporate guy, this new aesthetic hits completely differently, asking if he enjoys the fresh tailoring. Admiring the fabric, Dante admits the craftsmanship mirrors a high-end dress shirt. With a wide grin, Drillhead swears that from this exact moment forward, absolutely no one will dare lay a hand on him, stating that garments this impeccably stitched are reserved strictly for the elite. Opening his arms, the boss officially welcomes him into their syndicate, guaranteeing him absolute VIP treatment and total protection. Internally, Dante recalls the thug's earlier boast about being the closest associate to the supreme leader. His mind also flashes back to the grim warning from 182 that escaping this hellscape requires seizing the supreme leader's throne. He quickly calculates that by manipulating this crew, he might finally secure a direct line to the top brass. Interrupting his thoughts, Drillhead announces an epic, all-out fog festival to kick off immediately. Because of their new golden goose, rationing is officially a thing of the past, meaning they are prepared to burn through their entire stockpile to fuel his ultimate ascension. Keeping his face perfectly blank, Dante secretly wonders what the hell ascension actually means. Meanwhile, the henchmen are already losing their minds, chanting and thrashing around a massive mountain of the harvested narcotic, until their boss barks out an order to cut the noise. Staring at the sheer volume of the stash, Dante is visibly stunned. Is this crew seriously gearing up for the mother of all drug binges? Stepping into the center, Drillhead proudly declares himself the undisputed sovereign of the sole monarch of these forgotten depths. He claims this very second is the grand culmination of their endless grinding, fueled by the astronomical reserves they have hoarded for months. He is fully prepared to challenge the ascension ritual right now. The entire hideout erupts into deafening roars, desperate to watch their leader transcend and claim ultimate victory. Casting a wild, intense gaze back at Dante, Drillhead commands him to keep his eyes glued to the spectacle. He tells him to witness the glorious, unfiltered birth of it. All eyes are locked onto him as he starts aggressively devouring the thick mist. His loyal followers relentlessly fuel the ritual, chanting for him to rise higher and transcend this mortal plane. He ravenously swallows the vapor, draining the room until mere wisps remain, his stomach ballooning to grotesque proportions. When the transformation stalls, Drillhead sighs in defeat, assuming it's just another failed attempt. He's inhaled massive amounts of this stuff over his lifetime. Yet a frantic underling points out that his inner potential is simply outpacing his physical form. They just need to push harder. Out of nowhere, gasps echo through the chamber. Fingers point as Drillhead's skull violently expands. The crowd erupts into deafening cheers. They are convinced the grand ascension is happening. Drillhead himself is completely overwhelmed, sensing the vast cosmos rushing into his mind. His consciousness plunges into the very birthplace of the mist. He witnesses the universe's ultimate secrets, even as his limbs stretch and mutate wildly. "We are all trapped," he gasps, "in a pale blue hell." And then, snap. His flesh simply ruptures the fragile shell, unable to contain the immense pressure. Blood and mist spray everywhere, but the fanatics just scream in joy. To them, this gruesome death is a glorious fall. The eerie warning from prisoner 182 echoes in Dante's mind. You either ascend or you fall. He stands paralyzed, staring in absolute horror at the celebrating cultists. From the shredded corpse, a torrential downpour of fresh mist showers the room. This sick feast, this is their grand festival. The crazed followers scramble like starving animals, frantically swallowing the vapor radiating from their dead leader. Dante watches nauseated as the gorging men suddenly start detonating one by one. The bloody spectacle hammers home a terrifying truth. He isn't on Earth anymore. He is trapped in the nightmarish reality of Fogland. A frantic inmate, desperately stuffing his pockets with the residual mist, screams for the mob to halt. If they keep stuffing their faces, they will all pop like balloons. Human bodies simply can't process this massive surge of energy at once. The desperate man seizes Dante's trembling wrist, begging him to intervene. "You have to take charge. You're our new leader." But Dante's psyche has completely snapped. "Hell no!" he shrieks, violently yanking his arm away and sprinting for his life. He screams in pure panic, rejecting the crown of this insane asylum. Instantly, a horde of blood-soaked lunatics swarms after him, determined to drag their new messiah back. Lungs burning, boots pounding against the grime. Dante's mind spirals into chaos. What the hell is this place? This has to be a nightmare. It has to be. None of this sick horror can be real. From the very moment he woke up in this hellhole, he knew logic had died. He violently pinches himself, desperately chanting, "Wake up! Wake up! Wake up!" Suddenly, a familiar silhouette blocks his frantic escape. It's the one person who warned him. The voice that repeatedly whispered those dark truths. "Brother," Dante sobs, recognizing the figure. He collapses, begging pathetically. "Please, help me. Rip me out of this nightmare. Just take me home." But his brother's tone is ice cold. "Are you still this dense?" he mocks. "My face, this appearance, it's completely irrelevant. It's nothing but a cheap, pathetic disguise, a coward's mask." At those piercing words, the last fragile thread holding Dante's sanity together snaps. He drops to his knees, unleashing an agonizing gut. You see, Dante suffers from a twisted psychological barrier, selective face blindness. He physically cannot picture his own brother's features, substituting the face with a blank, terrifying orb. In his twisted memories, whenever his brother unleashed his cruelest verbal assaults, that blank sphere would warp and shift uncontrollably. One second it morphed into a furious, scowling stranger, the next a weeping woman. Sometimes it twisted into the grotesque visage of an actual demon. To protect his own fragile psyche, Dante's brain took the easiest route, erasing the face and leaving behind a hollow, emotionless void. "Dante?" His brother's chilling voice echoes from the void. With a sharp gasp, his eyes snap open. But the nightmare is gone. He's tucked safely under a scratchy prison coat, resting in a completely unfamiliar hideout. Someone actually handled him with care. Flinching, he glances over and spots Rambutan and Lychee hovering nearby. "Hey, you holding up?" they ask softly. Dante rubs his temples, his memories a blurry mess. Was that bloodbath just another hallucination breaking the silence? Lychee gently explains that they dragged him out of the chaos. It turns out Drillhead's psychotic cult lair was marked on their stolen map the whole time. They tracked him down to the rancid sewer tunnel, finding him passed out, face first in the sludge. Still shaken, Dante stammers, "You guys actually came back for me." Lychee nods with a warm, reassuring smile. "We made a pact to break out of here together, didn't we?" she says. Feeling a massive surge of relief, Dante realizes fate just handed him a second lifeline. He immediately scrambles up, apologizing frantically for dragging them down. "We need to move, now," he urges. But Lychee places a calming hand on his shoulder. "Breathe. Rambutan needs to recover anyway. We've covered a massive distance." Slowly she pulls back the heavy fabric of their makeshift shelter, revealing a breathtaking sight. The massive, towering perimeter wall looms directly in front of them, and best of all, this sector is completely blind. Not sparks crackle from a makeshift trash barrel fire as they huddle for warmth. Staring into the flames, she quietly asks if Drillhead is actually gone for good. Without missing a beat, the entire room had completely devolved into absolute madness. "What in the world even happened?" she mutters. Rambutan chimes in, dropping a heavy truth bomb. He calls the horrifying phenomenon falling. Basically, it is a fatal overdose from consuming way too much fog. Rambutan casually brags that he once wolfed down that exact same lethal amount himself. Dante just squints at him, highly doubting the guy's wild claim. Chuckling, Rambutan quickly waves off his own joke. Getting serious, he breaks down the grim mechanic. But here is the brutal catch. Every single vessel possesses a breaking point, and that invisible ceiling drastically varies from person to person. The second someone blindly crosses their unique threshold, their body violently ruptures. Every single ounce of vapor they have ever swallowed brutally erupts straight out of their flesh. The terrifying part: nobody actually knows how much their physical body can handle before popping. Rambutan points out that Dante clearly possesses his own hidden talents, right? Even so, Dante has absolutely zero clue where his own fatal red line is drawn. And when a person pops, that is exactly how the mist recirculates back into the world. Like greedy vultures, the survivors just sit back and patiently wait for another poor soul to shatter. Hearing this twisted reality suddenly triggers a chilling memory for Dante. He recalls the exact ominous warning that 182 had shared. Ascendance or falling. Those are the only two destinies waiting at the end of the line. Since falling guarantees a gruesome grave, Dante narrows his eyes. What exactly does it mean to ascend then? Does it mean shattering? Rambutan breaks it down. It's not just about pushing past your limits. It's a rare dual-core ability that only awakens when someone maxes out their absolute potential. A secondary power attaches itself to them, bowing to their will, crowning them as an absolute ruler. But reaching that ascension, That's basically unheard of. 99% of people just crash and burn. For a split second, Dante questions the sheer insanity of it all. Why gamble your actual life on a pipe dream that almost nobody can pull off? Rambutan tells him it's practically a myth passed down through the slums. The prophecy says a savior will eventually rise wielding a boundless arsenal of abilities. People cling to the hope that this figure will shatter the very rules of reality, liberate everyone, and ascend to godhood. That's the true meaning behind the title Supreme Leader. Meanwhile, lurking much closer than they realize, someone is eavesdropping. His hypersensitive ears pick up every single vibration in the vicinity. The flutter of pigeon wings, the heavy breathing of a nearby thug, even the splash of some random dude. He catches absolutely everything. Most importantly, he zeroes in on the faint click of Dante, adjusting his glasses. 182's eyes snap open. He finally tracked his prey down into the sewers. Down there, heavily equipped scavengers, they start harvesting the lingering mist rolling off Drillhead's corpse. A masked woman gazes around, mesmerized by the ambient glowing haze. It feels like another poor soul drops dead trying to ascend every single day. She examines what's left of Drillhead, stunned by how intensely the fool actually tried to pull off an ascension, which is just straight up pathetic. Still, if a dead man can't use his own residual energy, she is more than happy to scrape it all up. Out of nowhere, a voice interrupts, mocking her as a total amateur. The stranger tells her to leave that garbage alone and tosses her a heavy pouch packed with purified mist. She eagerly inspects the stash, absolutely thrilled by its top-tier purity. Ignoring her excitement, the red-haired man cuts to the chase, demanding to know if they tracked down their target yet. The masked lady smirks, asking if he means the one-armed freak. She shrugs playfully, teasing that they might have a lead, or maybe they're still totally clueless. The redhead glares, visibly pissed off. An entire damn year has dragged by, and this flimsy excuse is the best intel they can offer. The woman fires back, casually mentioning that this bounty, after all, isn't this a direct hit from Foglin's inner circle? The man snaps, ordering her to cut the crap, but she refuses to back down. Inflation has been brutal this year, so he better be ready to cough up some extra cash. Begrudgingly, the red-haired guy caves. If she actually drags that one-armed bastard right to his feet, he promises to write her a blank check. Back at the camp, daylight creeps into the tent, and Dante, swapping out his original uniform, was a massive mistake. His old gear trapped the heat way better and was actually comfortable. While he practically turns into an icicle, those two lovebirds right next to him are shamelessly making out. They threw a jacket over their heads to conceal their little romance session. Suddenly, Dante lets out a loud sneeze. That totally ruins the mood, proving he had been wide awake. Dante brushes it off, groaning that he is perfectly fine. It's just shaping up to be a really, really miserable morning. Later, the trio stands before a towering, impossibly steep barricade. But Dante spots a chilling detail. Dark crimson splatters stain the concrete. They look completely fresh, yet he didn't hear a single scuffle last night. A sudden wave of intense dread washes over him. Desperate to shake the feeling, Dante asks if he needs to pitch in. Rambutan nods, telling him to just grip the heavy duffel bag tightly. Oh, and one more crucial detail. Rambutan stares him dead in the eye, asking if he considers himself a man of faith. Dante blinks, totally caught off guard. Before the kid can even process the question, Rambutan orders him to start reciting a prayer. Dante stammers, a freaking prayer. He admits he's a hardcore atheist. But the big guy waves it off, claiming that when survival is on the line, everyone finds religion. You pray for a miracle for that one slim chance to escape this hellhole alive. Seeing the dead serious look in his eyes, Dante mutters that he only memorized the Lord's Prayer. Rambutan flashes a grin. That is plenty, so he tells him to hop on. Finally ready to breach the wall, Dante and the girl scramble onto Rambutan's massive back. The brute squats low, channeling an insane amount of explosive energy. He barks at Dante to start chanting, and the kid frantically obliges. Rambutan launches into a tense countdown, stomping his heavy boots into the dirt over and over to build up massive kinetic pressure. Dante mumbles the holy words, screaming them internally, praying to whatever is up there that this crazy stunt actually works. But right before liftoff, a gigantic mutated hand slams down, pinning. Before he can even plant both feet firmly back into the dirt, the jarring impact of the fall sends them all staggering backward. Rambutan absorbs the brunt of the crash, prompting Lychee to bark at him to snap out of it and pull himself together. Dante spots 182 barreling toward them like a freight train, his eyes burning with an unprecedented. "How the hell did you get here?" Dante stammers. But 182 is practically foaming at the mouth, roaring that Dante's lies have just earned him a death sentence. The massive inmate wildly thrashes his grotesquely swollen arm through the air. Dante scrambles away, desperately screaming to know what he did wrong. Just as 182 closes in Rambutan, snatches Dante up in a flash, hauling ass in the opposite direction. Lychee is completely baffled. Why on earth did this psycho track them down just to pick a fight? Rambutan should really just knock the guy out and vault over the damn wall already. But no matter how fiercely Rambutan sprints, 182 matches him stride for stride. Is this maniac secretly an Olympic runner or something? Closing the gap. 182 gets right in Dante's face, growling a promise to snap his legs like twigs if he doesn't stop running. Dante frantically points out that he isn't even the one doing the running. And out of nowhere, 182 sweeps Rambutan's legs, sending the whole group crashing back down, scraping brutally across the filthy gravel. As Dante blinks away the dizziness he finds, 182 making it crystal clear that he isn't playing games. Sweating bullets, Dante begs the giant to just take a breather and chill out. "What did I even lie about?" he pleads. "I gave you the exact instructions for growing sweet potatoes, didn't I?" 182 snarls that he followed every single step. He poured the water, he gave it sunlight, but absolutely nothing sprouted. Dante's brain completely short-circuits. Glancing down at the watch he miraculously managed to keep, Dante realizes it has barely been 24 hours. How the heck did this guy expect to harvest overnight? The hulking inmate assumes Dante is just screwing with him, but Dante clutches his own head in frustration, shouting that nature actually takes time. Isn't it obvious? You need at least a solid week to see even a tiny sprout. Surprisingly, 182 just blinks, accepts the logic, and bluntly asks where Dante is heading. Brushing the grime off his clothes, Dante reminds him that he already explained this. He is breaking out of here. Their deal is done, right? 182 slowly glances between Rambutan and Lychee, questioning if Dante is trusting those two specific guys. Confused, Dante asks what the hell he means, warning the giant to keep his hands off his friends. He already paid his debt with the farming advice. He was finally about to escape and go home, but 182 locks eyes with him, asking deadpan if Dante seriously has a death wish. You want freedom so badly, yet you're perfectly fine throwing your life away for them. Rambutan instantly screams at the giant to shut his damn mouth. Rambutan barks that this conversation is over. So why doesn't the freak just get lost and stop harassing them? He motions for Dante to hurry up and rejoin their group, telling him to totally ignore the crazy bastard. But a cold knot of dread suddenly twists deep inside Dante's gut. He turns back, pressing 182 to explain his cryptic warning. But Rambutan violently snatches his arm, waving off the giant's words as the delusional ramblings of a rotted brain. He insists they are completely out of time, so they need to make a break for it right this second, while the window is open. Suddenly, Lychee barks at Rambutan to just grab the kid and floor it. Dante protests, begging them to hold on a second, because he still needs answers. But Rambutan shoots back, ordering him to pray faster, demanding to know if he actually wants to survive this hellhole or not. Pushed into a corner, Dante desperately focuses his mind, temporarily forgetting he is channeling immense power. Rambutan launches them high into the sky with a godlike leap. Yet the sickening anxiety in Dante's chest refuses to fade. He flashes back to everything they've been through together, how they dragged his ass out of the fire time and time again. They made a pact to go home together. They actually cared about him, right? But in a split second, Rambutan creates a wedge between them, mid-air, coldly planting his boot square on Dante's chest. With a hollow apology for what comes next, Rambutan brutally kicks Dante away. The boy plummets head first, rocketing straight toward the gore-stained fence. To make matters worse, that bag Rambutan tossed him earlier, it turns out to be packed to the absolute brim with highly illegal, refined fog. Down below the prison sentries, detect a perimeter breach of exactly 30 centimeters. Clearly another inmate is making a desperate bid for freedom. But in the blink of an eye, the terrifying guardian simply vanishes into thin air. The prison system has been tripped. Tragically, Dante is now locked on as the guardian's primary target, abandoned to face a horrifying death all by himself, the ultimate betrayal. A flashback reveals Lychee mapping out the prison's layout, standing right in front of this exact monstrous entity. Lychee had strictly warned Rambutan to keep his hands off it, emphasizing just how lethal the creature was. It masquerades as a creepy stone gargoyle statue. As long as no prisoner breaches the perimeter wall, the beast remains perfectly frozen. So is that statue actually alive? He honestly can't believe it. But this monstrosity guarantees no one gets out. He'd heard the grim rumors, but Lychee revealed the dark truth. The beast materialized alongside the eerie mist. Whispers claimed it was a top-secret government safeguard, engineered specifically to lock down the vapor. Think of it as an absolute containment protocol. It targets the residue clinging to their skin, the very particles filling their lungs, every single trace. The higher-ups refused to let a single drop slip away, so they deployed an ironclad blockade. Rambutan wondered if the damn thing was actually sentient. Lychee nodded. It could track the mist after all. Worse, it instantly sniffs out the mere intention to flee. While that stone demon guards the perimeter, breaking out is physically impossible. Her suffocating despair deepened with every fleeting fantasy of the outside world. The harder she craved the golden sun, the heavier the chains felt. It was a brutal, infinite loop, and it was finally breaking her psyche. But Rambutan tightly gripped her trembling fingers. "We're not dying in here," he vowed. They just needed to exploit a blind spot. He'd sworn on his life to drag her out of this hellhole, so she just needed to hold on and trust him. To keep her safe, he'd cross any line, no matter the cost. Pushing off the concrete barrier, Rambutan glanced over his shoulder. The towering gargoyle had just devoured Dante whole, inhaling him alongside a massive plume of mist. A twisted, triumphant grin stretched across Rambutan's face. The crazy gamble actually paid off. Between the smuggled vapor in his sack and those pathetic, desperate prayers, the beast totally bought the decoy. It fully believed Dante was the primary target. This was their golden window. Without a second thought, he vaulted over the formidable wall, crashing hard onto the sun-baked terrain. He hit the shimmering golden dunes isolating the fortress. Real unfiltered UV rays beat down on his skin. It had been agonizingly long. They survived. Sweet, glorious freedom, he excitedly shouted for Lychee, but spun around to a nightmare. Her head was violently severed from her neck. A gruesome blood-soaked stump remained where her bright smile used to be. A sickening wet crunch echoed from the shadows, revealing a second one-legged sentinel looming nearby. Its massive jaws were rhythmically grinding down on something dense. It was Lychee, her skull. Rambutan stood utterly paralyzed as the monstrosity casually pulverized her remains, snapping bone and tissue into absolute paste. A primal, soul-shattering roar erupted from his chest. Blinded by grief, he sprinted straight at the colossal demon, launching himself into the air for a devastating revenge-fueled kick. But his strike never even connected. The gargoyle casually inhaled, then unleashed a blistering, incandescent wave of toxic vapor. The sheer force swallowed Rambutan alive, instantly melting away any trace of his desperate rebellion. Meanwhile, the first beast lumbered over the containment wall. Inmate 182 just glared. "You utter moron," he muttered. He had warned Dante escaping was a total pipe dream. Glancing down at his own completely fractured arm, 182 charged. He weaponized his shattered limb, delivering a thunderous right hook straight in. The rock violently cracked under the impact. Staggered, the beast retaliated with a hyper-pressurized beam of mist, but 182 executed a flawless split-second dodge. "You're really starting to piss me off," he snarled. He relentlessly hammered his bloody fist into the creature's fangs. "Just crumble, you piece of garbage." Miraculously, the reinforced shell finally caved in. Hidden inside the wreckage was Dante, miraculously intact, but bawling uncontrollably. He hysterically pleaded for a rescue, screaming that he regretted everything. He just wanted to survive. 182 silently extended his mangled hand and violently yanked the terrified inmate out of the rocky maw, slamming him onto the harsh concrete. Dante clung to his savior like a lifeline, hyperventilating about how close he came to the Reaper. His mind was spinning. Wasn't this guy sent to assassinate him? Why the sudden rescue? Why was he trapped in this insane, nightmarish death game? 182 coldly cut off his pathetic rambling. "Open your damn eyes. Tell it you surrender. Tell it you're never leaving." Blinking away tears, Dante looked up. The shattered, terrifying silhouette of the gargoyle still loomed overhead, instantly reigniting his primal terror. "What the hell is that?" he shrieked. It was a literal demon. They needed to sprint. They needed to bolt before it finished them off. Instead, 182 viciously pinned Dante's face into the dirt. "Swear to it," he growled. "Swear you'll never try to breach the walls again." He'd warned the idiot over and over. Escaping was a myth. He wasn't exaggerating to be cruel. "Spit it out right now if you value your pulse." Trembling Dante clenched his jaw. Broken and utterly defeated, he surrendered to his brutal reality, promising the beast that his escape attempts were permanently over. 182 locked gazes with the monster, watching it power down, as it sensed zero lingering defiance. Any trace of deceit between those two simply vanishes into thin air. Stumbling to his feet, Dante frantically demands to know what the hell that monstrosity was. Was the whole thing just some twisted trick of the mind? He immediately presses for answers about Rambutan and Lychee. Where did that couple disappear to? Did they actually pull off their grand escape? 182 hits him with the brutal truth. They perished. That terrifying sight wasn't merely an optical illusion. Any living soul who tries to flee this cursed wasteland meets a gruesome end. It doesn't matter if they possess raw power or an unbreakable romantic bond. Absolutely nobody stands a chance against the Hollow One. Meanwhile, deep inside the gloomy prison, that mysterious girl wearing a bag over her face relentlessly grills Bone Eater. She demands to know, is he actually a flesh-eating freak? I mean, it is a seriously horrifying title. Does he actually chow down on human meat? Or is it just some edgy moniker meant to terrify anyone trying to swipe his fog? Bone Eater chillingly shoots back that if she is so desperate to find out, they could always arrange a little taste. He shamelessly admits he is dying to know what her flesh tastes like. Completely disgusted, the girl sharply barks at him to put that thing away. She makes it crystal clear she never consented to being on the menu, though Bone Eater can already sense she would be incredibly tender. One graze of hips is all it takes for him to know. She smells absolutely mouth-watering, doesn't she? Still, you have to hand it to her. Stepping into this nightmare takes serious guts. So what brings a snack like her to this terrifying place? Without flinching, the mysterious girl whips out a photograph, calmly stating she is actually here. She needs to hunt down a very specific target. The guy in question, inmate number 182. He stands tall at 182 centimeters, sports twin moles on his right cheek, and oh yeah, he is completely missing his right arm. Without missing a beat, Bone Eater's freakishly long tongue slithers out, snatching the picture right from her hands. He drags the image uncomfortably close to his face. A twisted grin spreads across his lips as he drools over how incredible. "Mind if I take a bite out of him?" he asks. The woman just lets out an exhaust. If he is craving this guy's flesh that badly, she shrugs. Who is she to stop him? Bone Eater bursts into a manic fit of laughter. It is crazy how well she understands his twisted mind. But seriously, who is this girl? She pauses, mulling over the question before flashing a knowing look. At the end of the day, she is exactly like them, isn't she? Bone Eater is thoroughly amused by her sharp tongue. Honestly, he has never crossed paths with. The girl brushes off the compliment, pointing out that his shock makes perfect sense. After all, he is just a lowly village brat from these rugged parts. She survives in a ruthless wasteland where only the absolute strongest make it out alive. As a hardened veteran of District A, she watches the gargoyle retreat to its slumbering perch. The trackers, frantically measuring the beast's movements, freeze in absolute terror. Staring at they realize the gargoyles are completely shattered. Wait, what? How is that even possible? What could possibly crush solid stone? A bald scrapper stammers, wondering if the golem somehow took damage. But do those nightmares even bleed? Out of nowhere, a shadowy man named Baba Yaga erupts into a chilling, maniacal laugh, declaring this a dark omen. The room goes dead silent. The man hasn't uttered a single syllable in 5 long years. Baba Yaga rasps through the tension, warning them of a monumental shift. A literal crack has just formed in the unbreakable chains, trapping them in this hellhole. A shiver runs down their spines. This isn't just rambling. It's a rare prophecy. They scramble to carve his words into their memories. He whispers, "The caged bird has finally taken flight today. The dawn of their ultimate freedom is rushing closer." Meanwhile, Dante practically corners 182, desperate for answers. "You called it a hollow one, right? Did that thing butcher Lychee and Rambutan too?" 182 grimly replies. That it wasn't just a solo attack. Another monster was lurking in the shadows. They are multiplying. These nightmares actively hunt down and slaughter anyone daring to escape. He shakes his head, fiercely rejecting the horrifying truth. Why didn't Lychee and Rambutan ever warn him about this? 182 bluntly states that his friends fed him a pile of lies. But Dante refuses to accept it. Does stepping outside really guarantee a gruesome death? How can an abomination like that even exist without the outside world batting an eye? 182 snaps at him to wake the hell up. You literally saw it with your own 2 eyes. You cross that wall, you are dead. Just like he warned him before, this prison has no exits. Crushed by the agonizing reality, gasping that it's all a sick joke. It just has to be impossible. It can't be real. It just can't. In response, number 182 just outright clocks the guy. He already warned him to keep his trap shut while they grab some grub. Dante flat out refuses to touch it. His mind is completely consumed by the Hollow One, a terrifying monstrosity, specifically engineered to crush any hope of breaking out. It has to be the prison's ultimate security measure. Maybe some sort of nightmarish hallucinogen, or perhaps a deeply complex piece of machinery. Whatever its true nature, this system is ruthless enough to lock them all down completely. And remember, we are not dealing with your average convicts here. His thoughts drift back to the brutal reality of the day. He was nothing but human bait. He clenches his forearm, trembling at how narrowly he cheated death. But honestly, he was the absolute idiot here. Those two were simply dangling right over the edge of the abyss. Nobody has the luxury to play savior to a complete stranger. The entire situation was doomed from the start, entirely because he let his absolute desperation to break out blind him. He wanted out so badly that his logic totally crumbled. Seriously, why did this guy even step in to rescue him? What dark secret is he burying this time around? It definitely was not for a measly sweet potato, nor to score his clothes. And it certainly wasn't just to squeeze out intel about the fog. The guy had his back before too. Is it actually possible that this dude is genuinely just a decent human being? Sure, he hurled absolute garbage at him, treated him like complete scum on his shoe, stripped him of his humanity. So why the sudden act of kindness? But then, noticing how the man awkwardly balances a fork against his clearly shattered arm, Dante demands to know what happened. 182 violently jerks his limb behind his back. He snaps that he is perfectly fine, but Dante isn't buying that garbage for a single second. Stepping closer, he presses the issue. The flesh is violently ballooning. It is massively worse than before. They desperately need to find a medic. He absolutely cannot leave it untreated. 182 growls at him to back off. He insists it is fine, just a minor fracture. But Dante knows damn well that even if that were true, swelling of this magnitude is entirely unnatural. Does it hurt? 182 spits out a denial, but the second Dante grabs his wrist, a sharp flinch betrays his agonizing pain. The guy is just stubbornly toughing it out. Realizing this, Dante snatches up some shredded fabric and tightly binds the wound. 182 instantly flares up, ordering him to rip it off. But Dante shoots back that it is just a quick fix. If he keeps shifting that bone, the agony will only multiply. The stubborn guy demands he remove it because he needs to eat. Dante scoffs, pointing out he could barely feed himself anyway. Does this fool seriously not grasp the gravity of his injury? Without proper medical attention, that arm is going to be permanently dead weight. Does he honestly believe he can scrape by in this hellhole, relying strictly on his legs? Right now, they are practically just two pathetic weaklings, barely bumping along together. If they stumble across a single violent thug out there, they will be slaughtered before they even blink. Reluctantly, 182 finally suggests they track down the hospital. Shocked, Dante asks if a legitimate clinic actually exists in this dump. 182 nods. It supposedly has a working doctor and staff, or at least it completely mimics a real ward. Dante frantically demands the doctor's exact location, realizing this is absolute gold. But 182 shrugs, clueless, leaving Dante highly suspicious if this mythical medic is even real. However, 182 elaborates, recalling that he actually brawled with a doctor in the past. He guesses it went down somewhere inside Zone O. Dante takes a beat, realizing this facility is astronomically larger than it first appeared. He vividly remembers those two distinct illustrations on the map, which already proved this place was way too massive to be an ordinary penitentiary. Suddenly a light bulb goes off. The map, he still has the bag they looted earlier, the very same sack they had been lugging around. He frantically tears through its contents, and bingo, He pulls out the parchment, perfectly intact, buried right beneath the lingering traces of their stolen fog. This is it, their holy grail, their ultimate ticket out of this nightmare. As he spreads the heavy paper out, he remembers the words of his mother, a deeply devout Catholic. She always preached that absolutely everything happens for a reason. He might not share her unshakable faith in God, but damn if he doesn't agree with the logic right now. If a man can drag himself up after a brutal fall, then every single failure and setback transforms into a powerful legacy, a mere stepping stone in the epic story of his ultimate triumph. And just like that, he spots the hospital distinctly circled on the parchment. But wait, there is more. The entire document is absolutely plastered with critical data, exposing the highly classified layout of the entire fortress. The architecture resembles a massive sliced pizza, yet it looks like they only sketched out roughly 4 specific sectors. He squints, wondering if there is a central command hub pulling all the strings right at the core. But bizarrely, the center of the paper is completely sliced out. Wait a second. As his fingers trace the rugged edges, he realizes it is not missing at all. It is expertly folded in on itself, concealing a secret flap beneath as he eagerly peels it open. He discovers the command center labeled clear as day, Fog HQ. There really is a central nervous system buried deep inside this place, a master headquarters. He shouts enthusiastically at 182, declaring he finally has a foolproof plan. They are marching straight into the center, but he turns to find 182 doing a full-on zombie lean, totally folded over after catching a high from the fog. A brilliant mastermind at work, truly. Meanwhile, somewhere deep in the shadows, a highly notorious information broker sits counting his stash of fog, moving product like an underworld boss. Counting his recent massive payouts, Qasim figures that if his luck holds up, he'll track down that one-armed freak in no time. The one-armed dude has definitely stirred up a hornet's nest, though his name is echoing through the entire joint. Enter Qasim, the underworld's go-to information broker. A guard slides over a note flagging new clients at the door, but the bouncer has absolutely no clue what kind of monster he just invited inside. Before another word drops, Bone Eater's massive frame fills the doorway, blocking out the light as he steps towering over Qasim like the Grim Reaper himself. The broker freezes in sheer terror. This absolute unit is no joke. What could possibly satisfy a hunger like his? Look at that freakish hulking physique. We are talking about the deadliest apex predator stalking Zone O, a phantom who rarely steps out of the shadows. Qasim only knows the horrifying rumors. Swallowing his fear, he squeaks out, asking how he can help the Titan. In response, Bone Eater slams down a crumpled photograph of number 182. Qasim's out. Wait a minute. Isn't this the exact same guy Bloodhound has been hunting down? Reading the broker's face like an open book, Bone Eater growls, betting he's seen him. A greedy smirk creeps across Qasim's face. This is the ultimate jackpot. 2 heavy hitters hunting the exact same target means he gets to double dip and collect twice the payday. He smugly mentions he's already dug up the dirt on this guy. But so what's the giant willing to cough up? Bone Eater leans in close, whispering that sparing the broker's miserable life should be a fair trade. Or do you think your life is completely worthless? He sneers. Qasim forces out a nervous chuckle, his voice shaking like a leaf. He tries to play it cool. Is this a sick joke? Surely but Bone Eater isn't listening. His dead eyes are completely locked onto Qasim's fleshy ear. He just wants a tiny, juicy bite. Crunch. Chewing up the severed flesh. The monster, it carries a warm, salty kick, almost like ocean water. He muses that the bleeding broker must hail from the coast. With his bodyguards already slaughtered on the floor, Qasim bleeds out in pure panic. Bone Eater barks an order. Track down that one-armed punk immediately, or else he might just develop a severe addiction to Qasim's unique flavor, taking bite after bite until there's nothing left but a pile of bones for his evening broth. Cut to later that night, Dante sneaks through the corridors with number 182 trailing behind. Dante has strapped a bizarre, creepy mask to his face. Baffled, number 182, Dante casually drops some wisdom. If you want to successfully hide a single tree, you bury it deep inside a forest. Basically, he's playing the part of a deranged inmate, so he seamlessly blends in with the prison's lunatic population. But Dante's heavy, raspy breathing instantly gets under number 182's skin. Annoyed by the noise in his sluggish cage, the one-armed fighter violently kicks Dante right in the spine. He flat out refuses to take another step on an empty stomach. Dante snaps back, utterly confused. Didn't they just agree to lay low and get his missing arm fixed first? But number 182 does not care. He's obsessing over the 2 mess halls they already skipped past. The man demands a meal. Dante rubs his temples, completely mind-blown that a grown-ass man is throwing a toddler-level tantrum over lunch. He strictly warned him the chow hall is a total death trap. There are way too many hostile eyes watching. Back in his prime, if the guy was starving, he just grabbed food. If exhaustion hit, he crashed hard. And if some idiot stepped up to him, he simply crushed them. But those glory days are dead and gone. With his arm blown off, his raw fighting power is severely crippled. Standing still isn't an option either. Dante locks in his resolve. They are officially backed up against a lethal cliff drop. Taking even one step backward guarantees a gruesome end. So they have to push forward, no matter how utterly ridiculous Dante looks in this getup. Meanwhile, back at the blood-stained intel booth, Qasim is furiously piecing the puzzle together. The master prison registry is a flawless work of art, meticulously built by every single broker operating across the sectors. Fogland operates on a recycling system, handing out a dead inmate's number to the freshest meat. It never misses a beat. Yet the final chilling entry for number 182 simply reads, deceased. And for 22 agonizing years since that date, that specific code has never once been stamped onto a new soul. Who the hell is this phantom? One of the surviving guards chimes in. It happens all the time in this hellhole. Vultures snatching up rare vintage tags for street cred. But Qasim shakes his head. That's way too convenient. Hound specifically warned him that this target operates on an entirely different level. The fact that the prison officially issued him a crisp, brand new uniform proves that the ID number is 100% legit. The guard scratches his head, totally baffled. Even if this freak somehow cheated death 2 decades ago, how does he still look like a 20-year-old kid? Qasim's mind spins. It defies all logic. A guard floats a wild theory. Maybe the guy unlocked the youth talent. Or hell, maybe the system is just lagging. But Qasim shuts that down fast. Zero chance that happened. 22 long years have passed. More than enough time for whispers to reach the local info brokers. Which means someone buried the truth on purpose. An absolute cover-up of this scale that has the Administration Bureau's fingerprints all over it. They are the sole players with... Finally, Dante and 182 step into Dumpling Village, the exact settlement housing that elusive hospital. Dante probes 182 for any lingering memories of this place, but the guy draws a total blank. His only certainty. This definitely isn't Tofu Village. Dante breathes a heavy sigh of relief. Thank God they finally escaped that absolute nightmare. They've covered serious ground, but 182 quickly shatters his relief. He warns Dante to keep his guard up, sensing a massive concentration of heavy hitters nearby. And he's right. The further they push into the streets, the more terrifying auras they detect. Yet as they venture deeper, the vibe feels weirdly laid back, especially for a literal prison complex. It perfectly mirrors a bustling metropolitan night market. Dante instantly picks up on this jarring shift in tone. Glowing neon lights illuminate bustling storefronts. They actually have running electricity and a fully functioning economic system. The streets are absolutely packed, boasting a population that utterly... Scanning their map earlier revealed that the infamous shoulders govern all these territories. Yet mysteriously, the specific shoulder ruling over Dumpling Village is entirely absent from the records. Blank. Still dropping their guard is suicide. Venturing into completely uncharted territory demands absolute paranoia. He turns to whisper a tactical retreat to 182, suggesting they duck into an alley to formulate a solid game plan. But 182 is already hunched over a food stall, demanding a meal. The grumpy owner growls his price, 10 fog milligrams for a single dumpling. 182 just stares back, casually mentioning his pockets are completely empty. Chaos instantly erupts. The vendor violently hurls 182 onto the pavement, screaming bloody murder about a thief. A massive crowd aggressively swarms the commotion, utterly baffled by the sheer audacity of someone trying to rob the most legendary establishment in town. Dante freezes utterly dumbfounded by this rapidly escalating disaster. They are literally being branded as criminals, despite not stealing a single crumb. Yet 182 furiously barks at the guy to fork over the food anyway. Dante mentally facepalms, all hope leaving his body. The enraged chef roars, demanding to know if this punk expects the sacred dumplings crafted with the literal soul and rich history of their village. Do you think my culinary art is some kind of sick joke? Are you begging for a death wish? Panicking, Dante slaps a hand over 182's mouth, desperately spitting out apologies. Unfazed, the furious vendor suddenly yanks out a massive, gleaming meat cleaver. He points the blade and growls, demanding their identities. Sweating bullets, Dante scrambles to explain they aren't He spins a quick lie, claiming this is his severely ill, mentally unstable little brother. The vendor glares, seeing right through the pathetic bluff. To him, that sounds exactly like something a dirty, lying thief would say. Plus, their creepy, obscuring masks aren't exactly doing them any favor. He ruthlessly declares the village's golden rule: scum aren't welcome here, and trespassers are swiftly. Dante wildly scans the bloodthirsty mob closing in, bracing for a brutal fight. But just before the chaos erupts, a towering figure steps forward, silencing the entire crowd. Enter Elder Mongol Dumpling, a bizarre, intimidating man with a literal massive dumpling for a head. He strides straight toward Dante, calmly examining the so-called sick brother, and immediately noticing Dante's visibly mangled arm. The vendor quickly points fingers, screaming that this crippled guy attempted to swipe their sacred Mongol dumplings. Mongol just shuts him down instantly. He dryly points out Dante lacks a functioning hand to even steal with. What was he planning to snatch a bun with his toes? Diffusing the tension, the elder gestures for the duo to follow him, offering to cover their meal. Once they're safely seated and scarfing down hot food, Mongol leans in curiously, questioning their choice of those deeply unsettling, vicious-looking masks. He notes it practically screams suspicious intruder. Yet he graciously offers a sincere apology for his aggressive vendor's behavior, explaining that the locals are just fiercely protective. After all, the folks here just want to live simple lives, cooking, selling, and enjoying their dumplings. Feeling the guilt, Dante bows his head deeply, apologizing for the massive scene they accidentally sparked. Brushing it off, Mongol shifts the mood, warmly asking how the food tastes. Dante's eyes literally widen. He's utterly blown away by the rich, savory explosion of flavor. He openly wonders how on earth they source such high-quality ingredients in a desolate prison. Right as Mongol begins to reveal the dark secret, the second he realizes they scavenged this garbage from the cafeteria's leftover slop, he instantly spits his food out in disgust. He starts shoving the remaining dumplings straight into 182's mouth. The big guy, he's been practically drooling waiting for this exact moment. Dante arches an eyebrow. Guess you guys don't mess around with food waste here, huh? Mongol gives a grim nod. Dead on. These dumplings, they are the absolute pride and joy of this settlement. Scavengers trek miles just to get a taste. But of course, some wander in hunting for something else. They come hunting for the clinic. Mongol shoots them a knowing glare. Seems like you two are chasing that exact same ghost, right? If that's your goal, drop it. Right now. He rolls up his sleeve, flashing a forearm completely shredded with brutal scars. The place you're hunting down, it ain't a healing center anymore. It's the Demon King's fortress. That's what the Whispers call it. A slaughterhouse way worse than the hellhole we currently live in. Completely unbothered, 182 just keeps happily munching on his dumplings. Dante frowns, thoroughly spooked. What the hell do you mean, Demon King's fortress? Mongol's voice drops to a whisper. There is a terrifying monster lurking out there. It made its nest inside those ruins. That creature caused all of this destruction. Take my advice. Stay as far away from that bloodbath as humanly possible. Dante narrows his eyes. Wait, are you talking about some ruthless gang bosses running the turf? Mongol shakes his head heavily. No, not even close. This is a completely different breed of nightmare. Just stepping foot near that perimeter is a guaranteed death sentence. Frustration creeps into Dante's voice. Then what about the medic? Is there seriously nobody left inside to patch people up? We desperately need a doctor, man, no matter the cost. Mongol turns his back, his tone icy. There is no healer left. The only thing waiting in those ruins is the Demon King. I highly suggest you pack your bags and vanish the second the sun comes up. I'll let you crash here for one night. But mark my words, that clinic is a graveyard now. Drop this suicide mission. True to his word, Mongol tosses them a room key. But Dante's mind is racing. What the hell was that old man talking about? What kind of massacre went down there? Did this so-called Demon King butcher all the medical staff? He turns to his massive companion. Hey, when was the exact last time you actually laid eyes on this doctor? 182 grunts. A long time ago. Dante rolls his eyes. Yeah, no kidding, genius. I mean, How long exactly? Do you remember any solid details? What did the clinic look like when you walked in? Was it this totally wrecked? The big guy squints, digging through his foggy memories. He was missing an arm. His stomach was roaring. The room was spinning. So he dragged his bleeding body to the clinic for a quick fix. The second he breached the front gates, I literally just stared at the guy and told him to fix my arm. Dante blinks, totally thrown off. Wait, you just demanded it like that. What the hell did the doc say back? 182 scratches his chin, picturing the scene. The guy told me he couldn't just snap it back on immediately. Asked me what my big plan was. That's the gist of it. So, I punched him. Then he punched me back. And then he clocked me again. Dante's stomach drops as the story unfolds. Panicking, Dante yells, "Dude, please tell me you didn't outright murder the..." Luckily, 182 shakes his head. Dante lets out a massive sigh of relief. Okay, so he just roughed him up a bit. Whatever. The point is that Doc should still be alive in there, right? 182 snorts. Nope. Got it backward. I was the one who got my ass brutally handed to me. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I gotta get my payback. Dante waves his hands frantically. Whoa, pause. Who the hell are you planning to punch with that busted stump of an arm? We don't even have a clue if the guy is breathing or buried under rubble. Plus, the settlement leader laid it out clearly. That clinic is completely empty. No medics left. 182 totally scoffs at that. Bullshit. I literally heard that doctor's voice echoing from the ruins. He's definitely in there. Don't know what the hell he's doing, but he's there. Armed with that sliver of hope, they marched straight to the clinic at dawn. And man, the old guy was not exaggerating. The place is painted crimson. Mutilated corpses, some rotting, some terrifying. Looks like the dumpling geezer was dead on. This slaughterhouse doesn't look anything like a sanctuary. Dante frantically grabs 182's shoulder. Are you 100% positive the doc is inside this meat grinder? 182 fiercely doubles down. I heard his damn voice. So zip it and follow my lead. Watching him, a chilling realization hits Dante. 182 has another freakish mutation. His hearing is borderline superhuman. He picks up the faintest sound waves with terrifying clarity, because late last night when Dante pressed him about what exactly he heard drifting from the ruins, the big guy just pursed his lips and perfectly mimicked an eerie, high-pitched whistle. But Dante is sweating bullets. Was that creepy whistling actually the medic he nervously asked the giant if this hyper-hearing was some kind of awakened talent? Like some freaky radar-level sensory skill. 182 just shrugged it off. No clue. I don't mess around with any of that weird superpower crap. Dante just couldn't buy it. Was the guy straight up lying to him? Or did he actually possess some freakish superhuman hearing? Maybe that explained why he kept complaining about all the phantom noise. If he was hiding a power like that, he needed to spill the beans. That kind of edge could literally save their lives out here. But since 182 kept playing dumb, Dante decided to test him. He covered his mouth, whispering something barely audible. Instantly, 182 lashed out, kicking him square in the chest. Dante hadn't even parted his lips. He hadn't made a single peep, yet the guy picked up on it crystal clear. That settled it. The guy's ears were an absolute radar. But that brought up a terrifying question. Was this towering structure actually the Demon King's fortress Dante had heard whispers about? Or was it just the creepy abandoned hospital from 182's memories? Well, guessing wouldn't get them anywhere. They had to see for themselves. Just as they stepped up to the entrance, Dante violently yanked 182 back. They stared down the menacing front doors of the hospital. Dante leaned in, demanding to know if his partner caught any chatter echoing from within. 182 shook his head, dead silence. Relieved, Dante grilled him on the game plan, making sure he actually remembered it. "Repeat it back to me," he ordered. Monotone 182 recited their strategy. First, tap the glass, then scramble into the shadows like their lives depended on it. If whoever opened that door wasn't wearing a white coat, they'd grab their weapon and bolt. Dante flashed a grin, thrilled he actually memorized the steps. Perfect. Now get out there. The master plan was simple. Ring the bell, then book it. And luckily, 182 wasn't just armed with freakish radar ears. He was insanely fast. We're talking Rambutan levels of hell, maybe even quicker. Sending him as the bait was the safest bet to scope out whatever horrors lurked inside that hospital. Right on cue, 182 sprinted up, gave the glass a few quick kicks, and darted back, only to instantly trip and faceplant right next to Dante in the bushes. They held their breath, waiting. Nothing. The doors stayed firmly shut. Dante whispered, asking if the place was completely deserted. "Are you picking up any footsteps?" he hissed, but 182 Boo just shook his head. Frustrated, Dante figured they needed to up the ante. "Go again, but smash it louder this time." 182 dashed back, delivering a heavier strike. Yet, nothing. Just dead, suffocating silence. What the hell was going on in there? Dante urgently asked, if he could still hear that doctor's voice from earlier. But 182 just grunted, deciding the third time was the charm. He charged at the entrance one more time, but the second his boot grazed the glass, boom! The entire front door exploded outward in a shower of jagged shards. "Fall back, get the hell out of there," Dante screamed, but it was too late. A massive force launched 182 backward through the air, sending him brutally skidding across the concrete pavement. Jaw dropped. Dante locked his eyes on the swirling dust at the entrance. Was this it? Was he finally staring down the dreaded Demon King? But as the smoke cleared, a very different figure stepped through the wreckage, casually twirling a gleaming pair of surgical scissors around his finger. "How incredibly obnoxious," the man spat. "Do you pests enjoy testing my patience? Have you never heard of a gentle knock?" Scraping himself off the ground, 182 bluntly pointed out the obvious. The guy was wearing a doctor's coat. The man raised an eyebrow, genuinely baffled. "Are you blind? What did you break down my door looking for a checkup?" "Yeah," 182 grunted, shoving his mangled arm forward. "Fix this." A dark vein popped on the doctor's forehead. "You've got exactly 3 seconds to get out of my sight before I dissect you." Sweating bullets from the bushes, Dante frantically hissed, "Dude, show some respect. Act pathetic, beg if you have to." Ignoring him, the doctor stepped up, hooking a single finger aggressively into 182's mask. "Did you bring any fog to pay for my services?" he sneered. "Or did you actually delude yourself into thinking you deserve human decency? Low-life criminal scum like you make me sick." Unbothered 182 just repeated his demand. "You're a doctor, heal me." The doctor practically scoffed in his face. "And what does my title have to do with you trash? Did you honestly think I just hand out free charity to every bleeding rat that crawls to my doorstep?" Without warning, 182 whipped his leg up, aiming a lethal kick right at the doctor's stomach. Dante gasped, though deep down he fully expected this boneheaded move. But in a blur of motion, the doctor's hand shot out, casually catching the lethal strike mid-air. Exactly as I predicted, the doctor mocked his grip like a vice. "You gutter rats always resort to violence. Absolutely barbaric." With terrifying speed, the doctor unleashed a devastating counter kick. 182 barely dodged, and the strike completely obliterated the concrete pillar behind him, sending The doctor smirked, genuinely amused by his survival. Impressive reflexes, not bad for a crippled freak. Using his one bad arm as a pivot, 182 spun into a vicious sweep kick, slamming into the doctor. But the mad surgeon didn't even flinch, easily snatching his ankle out of the air. "I'll admit you put on a cute little tough guy act," the doctor chuckled darkly, gripping that trapped leg like a baseball bat. He ruthlessly slammed 182 face first into the pavement. Meanwhile, Dante finally collapsed, knocked out cold. From the sheer looming over his crushed opponent, the doctor smiled sadistically. "Well, look at you now. A busted arm and now a shattered leg. What exactly is a crippled little bastard going to do next?" The guy probably wouldn't last a single day outside a ward anyway. But out of nowhere, 182 whips his leg up, locking it tight around the man's skull. He viciously chomps down on his arm. But this isn't some wild, desperate thrashing. The doctor realizes the target, a calculated strike right at the thumb flexor. A wicked grin creeps onto his face. Things just got insanely interesting. Before 182 can press his advantage, the doctor unleashes a blindingly fast combo. A brutal jab to the neck, a crippling blow to the leg, a savage thrust to the waist, and a final punishing strike to the flank. Every single attack delivered with lethal precision, using his surgical scissors. 182 staggers backward, violently dropping to one knee. The doctor coldly announces that the fight is finished, detailing his surgical carnage, the pectoral muscle, the internal oblique, the lumbar muscle, and the peroneus longus. In a split second, 182 his vital tendons completely severed in a flash of steel. The terrifying reality finally sinks in. The doctor effortlessly twirls the bloody scissors looming over 182. He sneers, reminding the fallen fighter about those 3 seconds of grace, and how he absolutely should have used them to run. But right before the lethal finishing blow drops, Dante aggressively tackles 182, desperately screaming at him to stand down. He begs the giant to cool his jets, frantically reminding everyone that they didn't march in here to spark a bloodbath. Their only goal was securing an audience with the doctor. The maniacal surgeon glares down, demanding to know the identity of this pathetic little roach scurrying in the shadows. Dante firmly stands his ground, refusing to look like a... He clarifies that he just had serious doubts about this rotting dump actually function. The doctor scoffs, aggressively questioning why they are even bothering to seek medical aid. They should just embrace their garbage existence and crawl into a grave already. After all, they are bound to drop dead naturally in this hellhole, right? Sensing an opening, Dante cleverly plays on the doctor's deep-rooted disgust for the inmates. He fiercely insists that he is absolutely not a prisoner. He demands the surgeon look closely into his eyes. Crystal clear, zero trace of the fog. He is a 100% perfectly ordinary human being. The doctor blinks, completely bewildered by this revelation. How on earth did an average civilian end up rotting in this maximum security nightmare? Dante spins a rapid-fire tale, explaining the existence of an exclusive prisoner rehabilitation program. He claims he was an instructor brought in specifically for that initiative. But when a brutally violent prison riot erupted out of nowhere, he found himself hopelessly trapped behind enemy lines. Dante practically begs, emphasizing their desperate need for his medical expertise. The doctor busts out laughing. A private inmate education program. Well, now that is wildly fascinating. Dante scrambles to his feet urgently, doubling down on his fabricated backstory. He gestures wildly at his necktie. It's a genuine Stefano Rizzi. Surely a man of science recognizes top-tier, custom-tailored Italian luxury, right? Even the slacks are premium. What kind of filthy convict waltzes around wearing designer threads? Amused, the doctor finally asks what kind of favor this supposed teacher actually needs. Dante lays out his desperate terms: first, punch, in a direct call to the central management office. Second, stitch up his bleeding companion lying on the floor. The surgeon raises a suspicious eyebrow, asking if the battered giant is also an educator. Dante completely commits to the lie, smoothly declaring that the massive brute is actually the physical education instructor. He totally looks the part, doesn't he? Meanwhile, back in the dim, smoky confines of Qasim's office, the entire savage crew from the Bone Eater's posse has fully assembled. The towering Bone Eater violently kicks the door open, gleefully announcing that the promised day of reckoning has finally arrived. He aggressively demands that Qasim spill absolutely every piece of intel he dug up. Qasim nervously stammers that they never actually agreed on a strict deadline, but Bone Eater coldly corrects him. He warned Qasim that the second his mouth watered for that specific prey, he would return to collect. Qasim swallows hard, realizing this psychopathic cannibal is dead serious. Trembling under the pressure, Qasim frantically spills the beans, Tofu Village. A credible witness currently hiding in Tofu Village spotted the exact target he's hunting. Instantly, he storms out of the room vibrating with pure bloodlust. One of the terrified guards whispers, asking if betraying that secret was a lethal mistake. That information was premium intel that Hound has been ruthlessly tracking down. Are they seriously just handing it over to a rabid cannibal? Qasim glares back, asking what the hell else he was supposed to do. The guard nervously argues that they should have weighed the heavy consequences. If Bone Eater actually slaughters that specific target, will the other heavy-hitting bosses simply turn a blind eye? Especially considering the target is the absolute sole distributor of fog across the entirety of Zone O. Qasim shivers, asking the guard if he heard the monstrous rumbling growl erupting from the cannibals. In this ruthless underworld, sometimes survival means blindly following your raw, primal instincts. The lower-level thugs just don't grasp the pure terror that man embodies. Sure, there are unwritten treaties drawn up between the top-tier bosses and the central management, but Bone Eater couldn't care less about politics or boundaries. The only compass that freak follows is his ravenous hunger and the sick euphoric thrill of sinking his teeth into human flesh. Cutting back to the clinic, the doctor finally guides Dante and the crippled 182 deeper inside. Scanning the grim surroundings, Dante is horrified by the decaying state of the facility. It feels exactly like a rotting, abandoned slaughterhouse. With peeling walls and festering shadows, how could anyone call this a hospital? Just what kind of horrific, twisted experiments were they conducting down here? Eventually, the doctor strides back into the room, casually dismissing 182's massive injuries as mere flesh wounds. With a cold shrug, he states they just need some basic patchwork to get the giant back on his feet. Dante heals up just like that. He springs to his feet, suddenly realizing he completely skipped the introductions. He shoots out a hand for a quick greeting, but the doctor instantly recoils, warning him to back off, explaining that one touch could pass on a nasty. The doc introduces himself as Relin, or at least that's what he goes by. He then nods toward the unconscious guy on the operating table, asking for a name. Dante definitely isn't about to drop a prisoner number. Plus, he already locked in the whole gym teacher persona, so he thinks fast. "David," he blurts out. "Yep, David it is." Relin raises a skeptical eyebrow. With that fierce glare and rough edge, this guy hardly screams high school gym coach. Dante quickly pivots the conversation, bringing up the bizarre whispers he's heard about this facility. Word on the street is they're hiding an actual demon king in the shadows. Plus, this hospital is a total wreck. What kind of disaster tore through here? Relin lets out a heavy sigh, his expression darkening. Oh, something definitely went down. And because of that nightmare, getting a hold of the admin office is a hard no. They're essentially in the exact same boat. Relin is basically a hostage trapped in this hell against his will. Dante throws his hands up. Hold up. Trapped. Isn't this guy literally on the admin payroll? Relin nods. Technically yes, he works for them. But Dante is missing the bigger picture. He was dragged into this mess for a mission too. 4 agonizing years ago, he arrived here to sharpen his surgical skills. Back then, the place was packed with eager interns and transferred specialists. But that didn't last. A total lunatic completely snapped, wiping every single one of them out in a brutal frenzy. Relin was the sole survivor. Dante leans in, demanding to know what happened next. Didn't anyone mount a rescue op? Relin locks eyes with him, his voice laced with bitter irony. If they actually wanted to save me, do you really think I'd be rotting in this hellhole for 4 long years? Dante recalls the official story the fog was just too thick, stalling all rescue efforts. But Relin just looks baffled. The fog. He realizes Dante is still completely in the dark. The real admin lapdogs are those masked creeps, the ones strolling through the halls like this is completely normal. They didn't lose him in the mist. They intentionally left everyone here to the slaughter, treating them like livestock. Pacing outside the operating room, Dante chews on Relin's words. The doc is dead right. From day one, that mist swallowed the area in record time. 0 hazmat gear. Every single soul out there breathed that garbage in. But wait, he didn't spot a single N95 respirator out there. The military goons were rocking cheap, basic surgical masks. So who the hell were they? Undercover admin agents. What about those veteran guards who got shredded back in the classroom? Were they played for fools too? And why drag Dante into this meat grinder? The story was that a teacher vanished, and they needed an elite problem solver. Someone who could adapt. His mind flashes back to the day that twisted offer landed on his desk. William Cox from the International Alliance, personally, the head of the Creator Administrative Office and Special Ops leader, actually tracked him down in person. He gave some polished apology for dropping by unannounced, but Dante brushed it off. Still, why was a big shot from the Alliance knocking on his door? William casually mentioned how modest the place looked. Wasn't Dante the heir to the legendary Dr. Kang, a bloodline overflowing with generational wealth? Dante didn't deny it, but he made it clear he didn't earn a dime of that fortune. He'd been carving out his own. Was this suit sniffing around because of his parents? William shut that down immediately. The real target was Dante, the rebel who turned his back on his father's groundbreaking research and chose a humble life teaching kids instead. Dante just scratched the back of his neck, admitting as much. But out of nowhere, William started clapping, calling it a truly noble sacrifice, walking away from massive privilege and endless resources just to chase his own moral compass, especially while possessing such a terrifyingly perfect genetic code. Without another word, William slapped a classified dossier down onto the desk, pointing out that Dante is the exact masterpiece they've been hunting for. William drops the golden question: is he game for the gig? They're gearing up for the ultimate pitch. Dante flips open the heavy dossier, skimming the bold print. International Law Enforcement Agency Detention Office Prisoner Education Initiative. William breaks it down. The IAPCS, which stands for the International Alliance of Penitentiary Systems. They're practically begging him to spearhead a massive long-term educational overhaul inside their walls. Dante raises an eyebrow, asking if penitentiary is just a fancy. William nods grimly. A prison cell is exactly where dreams go to rot, and hope dies entirely. That's precisely why they desperately need a fiercely open-minded prodigy like him. Dante narrows his eyes, wondering what's driving this massive ego stroke. He doesn't view working with convicts as beneath his pedigree. Catching his drift, William smirks, claiming that humble grit is exactly the trait they prize most. It's classic Dante, through and through. William knows he's a rare breed, the kind of guy who can ignite a blazing beacon of hope, whether he's standing in a pristine paradise or a fiery hellscape. Cut to the makeshift clinic where Relin flat out warns inmate 182 that they are completely out of painkillers. The clinic is an absolute wreck, and he needs to know if the guy can stomach raw agony. 182 just gives a stone-cold nod. It's fine. So Relin dives right in. To compensate for the total lack of numbing agents, he plans to patch every gaping wound in a single brutal sweep. Without missing a beat, he plunges the scalpel deep into 182's flesh. His gaze sharpens into deadly focus as he carves the first incision. Instantly, he slices and stitches through raw muscle, seamlessly snapping broken tendons back into place, compressing a grueling surgery into a blistering span of just a few seconds. Barely a minute passes before he has 182 completely stitched up. The torn neck tissue, the shredded abs, the battered thigh abductors, and the mangled calves. Every single severed fiber is flawlessly Shockingly, the inmate didn't utter a single scream, let alone black out from the shock. Relin has to admit that ironclad pain tolerance is terrifyingly impressive. Wiping his bloody hands, the doc pivots to the final issue, the shattered arm. It's bulging with nasty swelling, and since the X-ray machine died ages ago, he's going to have to flay it wide open to see the damage. He orders the prisoner to bite down hard and brace himself. If the torture becomes unbearable, he'll just have to suck it up. Relin carves a vicious line down the forearm, but the second he peels back the skin, he finds the underlying bones utterly pulverized. Beyond the initial fracture, the limb took a catastrophic bone-crushing blow. What in the absolute hell did this guy tangle with to get mangled like this? Shaking his head, the doctor shifts to assess the ruined soft tissue, reaching in with tweezers to extract the floating bone shards. But the moment he yanks a jagged splinter free, a bizarre force violently snaps it right back in. Staring in pure disbelief, he watches the crushed bone fragments literally magnetize together, fusing onto the main skeleton. Hold on, that's not right. The shattered pieces are actively reversing their own destruction, effortlessly locking back to their original state, exactly like someone just hit rewind on time. Boiling over with sudden explosive panic and rage, Relin violently rips off and storms out of the damn operating theater. Dragging inmate 182 behind him, he marches straight up to Dante, absolutely foaming at the mouth with fury. He barks at Dante, demanding to know if he's got some sort of the absolute sheer audacity. How dare this guy pull a fast one and trick him into patching up a freakish monster from the cell blocks? As Dante watches the crazed doctor drag the patient away, he steps in, demanding to know what the hell is going on. Relin spits back that he's tossing this repulsive freak straight out the door. Baffled, Dante tries to piece together the sudden hostility. Did 182 accidentally slip up and reveal his inmate status? Impossible. The guy's vocal cords are wrecked, he can't even mumble a single word right now. Did the doc recognize him from a past visit? Relin cuts off his thoughts, screaming at him to cut the bull. There is zero chance this monstrosity is just a regular gym teacher. Relin knows exactly how the toxic fog mutates human flesh, and a grotesque tumor of that massive size doesn't just casually sprout overnight. It takes decades of festering. Without a shred of mercy, he hurls 182 violently onto the hard floor. Dante immediately steps up, asking what kind of unhinged stunt the doctor is trying to pull. No matter how wild the situation gets, tossing a severely wounded patient like garbage crosses every single ethical line. Snapping completely, Relin lunges forward, grabbing Dante by the— Who the hell is he really? Is he genuinely a teacher, or is that just another layer of his twisted scam? Unfazed, Dante coldly confirms his teaching credentials. Seething, Relin demands to know why a teacher is dragging around a high-risk convict. Keeping his cool, Dante explains that this man has literally pulled him from the jaws of death countless times, making him the one person in this hellhole he trusts with his life. Relin lets out a broken, hysterical laugh, realizing the naive teacher clearly hasn't experienced the true mind-shattering horrors lurking in this prison. Has Dante completely lost his mind? But Dante's gaze doesn't waver. He knows exactly the kind of nightmare facility he walked into. And because of that terrifying reality, he has to be ruthless in choosing his allies, figuring out precisely who actually... The guy is basically dead weight without someone holding his hand. Does he honestly expect to just cower in the shadows for the rest of eternity? Relin releases his grip, flat out, admitting this was his exact game plan all along. He despises everyone here, guards and inmates alike. He warns Dante to choose a side right now, unless he prefers rotting out there in the gutters. His offer is simple: stay. If Dante bunkers down in the clinic, Roland personally promises to keep him alive. But that other inmate, not a chance in hell. He absolutely refuses to let him cross that threshold. Staring down at 182, a bitter childhood memory flashes through Dante's mind. He remembers cradling a dying bird in his small hands, only for his older brother to mercilessly kick it aside, demanding he use his head. Why waste tears on a creature that was already a lost cause? Driven by that exact memory, Dante hoists 182 onto his shoulders, trudging away. Yet his stamina is plummeting fast. He seriously regrets getting tangled up in this mess. Why couldn't this guy just sit still and take the damn treatment? 182 mutters that he didn't even do anything wrong. Dante snaps at him to stop spitting while talking, pointing out that a physician wouldn't just lash out for zero reason, still barking back and forth. Dante loses his footing. The two of them violently tumble. By now, Dante's patience has completely vaporized. He demands the guy ditch that worthless heavy lamp immediately. It's weighing them down, and Dante's legs are giving out. But 182 stubbornly refuses. Dante explodes. He screams that he literally cannot carry him like this. Can the idiot not read the room? Why does he have to fight him on absolutely everything? Dante practically threw away a golden ticket out of that hospital. For his sake, Relin had literally promised him full protection. Met with dead silence, Dante furiously pinches the bridge of his nose. He realizes he should have taken the doctor's deal, instead of dragging himself down this miserable path. He violently smacks his own cheeks to snap out of it. Suddenly, Mongo steps out of the shadows, demanding to know what they are up to. Dante's jaw drops. Based on the big guy's earlier cowardice, he never expected Mongo to track them down unassisted. Together, they manage to haul 182 back to their original rundown shelter. Mongo is visibly pissed. Didn't he explicitly warn them to stay the hell away from that clinic? Dante fires back that they couldn't just sit on their hands while their guy bled out. Mongo doesn't buy it. He gestures at the battered inmate. The kid was holding up okay before, but now he looks like a corpse. What kind of hell did they stumble into? But mid-rant, Mongo stops dead. He notices the prisoner's arm is expertly bandaged, and the massive swelling is gone. Shocked, he asks if Rilan actually dragged them in for medical care. Dante scoffs, assuming the crazy doctor did a botched job. But upon closer inspection, the inflammation has drastically faded, secured with professional precision. What on earth went down in there? How did the injury recover at such incredible speed? Mongo is absolutely baffled they convinced him to help. Usually, Relin would rather die than patch up an inmate. Catching on, Dante asks if Mongo has history with him. Why lie about the clinic? Why hype it up as some terrifying Demon King's castle? Relin didn't seem like a monster at all. The man literally left the back door wide open for their escape. Sighing deeply, Mongo confesses the truth. It was all a massive bluff, to keep the desperate prisoners from swarming the lone doctor. He apologizes for the deception, revealing that the real story traces back years into the past. Years ago, that imposing building functioned as a genuine hospital. As Dante probably figured out, Fogland is nothing more than society's landfill. A giant dumping ground for the unwanted, the broken, and the rejected. Operating a medical facility in this hellhole was an unimaginable luxury. Back then, the medical staff possessed hearts of absolute gold. Despite the inmates acting like violent beasts, those doctors worked tirelessly, pouring their souls into treating the savages without a single ounce of judgment. Instead of seeing filthy criminals, they saw actual human lives worth saving. And slowly but surely, that relentless compassion transformed these hollow monsters back into men. Mongo reminisces about a day he dropped by, carrying a batch of fresh dough, urging his colleague to come grab a bite. Roland groggily lowered the medical textbook covering his face, complaining that the head doctor was already cooking, mere weeks after surviving a major surgery. His stitches were probably still raw. Roland scolded him for being a stubborn fool who completely ignored medical advice. Handing over the food, Mongo had simply smiled, wanting to repay even a tiny fraction of the immense gratitude he owed them. Mongol just wanted to show his gratitude, but Raylan brushed him off, mentioning the hospital pantry was already fully stocked. Mongol knew they were likely dining on high-quality rations, shipped in from the outside world. Unexpectedly, Raylan closed the distance and gently grasped Mongol's hand. He softly asked about his recovery. Was his mobility fully restored? A warm, genuine smile spread across Mongol's face as he nodded. He owed it all to the doctor's life-saving surgery. He even pointed out the perfectly folded dumplings Mongol had prepared today. For the first time in age, desperate to return the favor, locals started. Others hauled in salvaged junk they hoped might help, while a few misguided fools actually handed over raw fog to the medical staff. That lethal substance slowly piled up inside the wards. And that was the spark that ignited the nightmare. Driven by pure twisted greed, a mob stormed the building to hijack the stash. What followed was an absolute slaughter. The locals only caught wind of the chaos when dawn broke. But as they breached the doors, they stepped into a graveyard of butchered bodies. Frantic, they scoured every single floor, desperately hunting for a heartbeat. Deep inside the wreckage, Mongol stumbled across Raylan. Both of his legs were completely shredded, his chest barely rising and falling. The man was practically drowning in a pool of blood. Panicking, Mongol screamed for bandages, determined to drag the doctor back from the brink of death. But then the impossible happened. Balancing on his mangled, broken legs, Raylan hauled himself up and snarled at them to back off. He shrieked for them to get out of his sight, branding them all as demons, and swearing to butcher every last one of them. The doctor's sanity had completely snapped. Bleeding out and teetering on death's door, he still wildly slashed his scalpel at the rescuers. Ultimately, they had to abandon him, a tragic reality that hasn't changed to this day. Hearing this, Dante questioned how the hell the guy even pulled through. Mongol coldly revealed the grim truth. Raylan absorbed the fog. No one knows exactly what freakish mutation he awakened, but against all odds, he dragged himself back to life. He clawed his way out of the grave, only to be cursed with an agony far worse than dying. Now he haunts those abandoned hospital halls all by himself. He's likely scraping the absolute bottom of his supply barrels right now. Who knows how many days he actually has left before starvation kicks in. Flashing back to before the tragedy, a younger Raylan gagged, questioning how anyone could stomach those dumplings. To him, a senior physician immediately shut him down, ordering him not to trash-talk the meal. The locals had painstakingly sifted through the leftovers, selecting only the safest, cleanest ingredients to cook for them. Mongol poured his heart into this gesture. The older doc warned Raylan to watch his mouth, lest he crush the patient's spirits. Raylan bit his tongue, quietly acknowledging the harsh reality. After all, these people were nothing more than freshly released inmates. Changing the subject, he pointed at a growing mountain of glowing blue crystals. Why were they hoarding so much of this stuff? A nearby nurse whispered, wondering if these specific shards were the source of those superhuman abilities everyone kept talking about. The infamous fog. Another colleague shrugged it off, mentioning the substance was strictly stuck in the experimental phase. Someone else questioned why management wasn't just purging the gas entirely. The inmates were clearly already getting hooked on the high, but the head nurse aggressively shushed him. She subtly gestured toward a menacing figure in a slick suit and a gas mask silently standing guard in the corner. She hissed that they were better off staying completely clueless. This was high-level World Confederation business, way above their pay grade. The younger doc nervously agreed, assuming the bigwigs had a grand master plan. The senior surgeon then clapped his hands, urging the team to wolf down their food before Mongol's hard-earned dumplings turned ice cold. Suddenly, a blaring code red shattered the peace. A critical trauma case had just rolled into the ward. A panicked nurse burst through the doors, confirming the horrific injuries, prompting the crew to sprint the dying man straight into surgery. His heart rate was crashing fast, dropping below 40 beats per minute. Staring at the carnage, Raylan seriously doubted the guy stood a ghost of a chance. Their rusty, outdated equipment just wasn't going to cut it. Hearing this, the head surgeon violently snapped at him to shut the hell up. As long as the bleeding man on that table still had a pulse, it was their absolute duty to fight for his life. He barked at Raylan to scrub in immediately and act as his lead assistant. The two swiftly suited up and charged into the sterile white room. The sheer volume of blood painting the floor was terrifying. Worse yet, their blood bank reserves were rapidly hitting rock bottom. The veteran doctor cursed violently under his breath. In that mangled mess, pinpointing the bleed was completely impossible. But Raylan didn't hesitate. He snatched control instantly, spotting the culprit, the facial artery. The clinic director and the rest of the medical team stood completely paralyzed in absolute shock. Once they finally stabilized the patient, the senior surgeon collapsed into a chair, heavily sighing as the evening shadows crept into the operating. "Ever since you arrived, this was your first massive operation," the old man chuckled weakly. "Hell of a brutal ride, huh?" The veteran surgeon was completely baffled by Rellen's lightning-fast reflexes. The facial tissue was practically ground meat, making it impossible to tell flesh from blood, not to mention the horrifying rate that the artery was violently gushing. Rellen calmly explained that he caught a microscopic flicker right before the red tide flooded the cavity, leaving the senior physician utterly speechless. "Your focus, it's absolutely terrifying." He admitted he felt completely safe trusting the young prodigy. When Rellen quietly apologized for forcefully snatching the forceps, the old man just waved it off. "In a life-or-death crisis like that, to hell with operating room etiquette. Besides today, I was nothing more than your assistant. You dragged that guy back from the Grim Reaper's doorstep. So listen to me, don't ever throw the towel in. Mark my words, you are destined to become a legendary surgeon." But fate had a cruel twist waiting. Deep into the night, the newly saved patient wasn't planning on resting quietly in bed. Without a shred of hesitation, the psycho brutally slaughtered the older doctor the second they crossed paths, then stalked down the hallway to butcher Rellen. The killer sneered, recognizing the young surgeon instantly. Rellen was the very bastard who had trapped him, sealing him back inside this agonizing flesh prison. Trapped in a mortal body, the murderer grinned fiercely, promising to make Rellen taste the exact same torture. The agonizing punishment of merely staying alive. Snapping back to reality, Rellen violently launches a tin can against the wall, his eyes dropping to a soggy bag of dumplings. Meanwhile, back in Dumpling Village, Subject 182 grunts, hungrily demanding someone feed him a plate of those steamed buns. Dante rolls his eyes, snapping at him about where the hell they're supposed to find food out here. The big guy really has zero social awareness. Earlier Mongo, the village elder, had grimly revealed the haunting truth, how Rellen had barricaded himself inside that decaying hospital, surviving in total isolation for 2 whole years. Dante furiously argued that they needed to talk some sense into the stubborn doctor before he got himself killed. After all, Rellen still shared a deep, unspoken bond with the villagers. But Mongo shook his head bitterly. To Rellen, the locals were probably worse than total strangers. The only reason he even patched them up is strictly because Dante and his crew were complete outsiders to his trauma. Their hands were tied. Dante's assistant frowned, pointing out that if the doctor was willing to heal random strangers, didn't that prove his icy exterior was finally melting? Mongo sharply cut them off, exhausted by their cluelessness. "Rellen is punishing us by keeping his distance," the old man barked, ordering them to leave the doctor the hell alone. But Dante wasn't having it. "Look, we need to brainstorm an escape route right now. What is the actual point of rotting in this dump and throwing a pity party?" Dante yelled. "That doc possesses incredible skills and insider knowledge. If he's so eager to throw his damn life away, he might as well surrender it to me." Right then, 182 rudely interrupts, muttering that the doctor is nothing but a colossal pain in the butt. Dante furiously shoves a finger at the brute. "That nuisance is the only reason you're still breathing. Show some damn gratitude. It's meatheads like you that ticked Rellen off in the first place. You should be on your hands and knees, begging for his forgiveness." "Well, are you going to apologize or what?" 182 stammers defensively, his voice cracking as he mutters that the doctor actually threw the first punch, but then weakly admits that he's a suffering patient too. Dante freezes. For the very first time, the hulking beast wasn't radiating pure rage. The aggressive front was totally fake, deep down. The guy was just profoundly wounded. It hit Dante like a truck. This guy had probably been screaming for help from behind that furious mask this entire time. Just like edgy, rebellious teenagers who lash out at the world, masking their crushing anxiety and sadness behind a thick wall of hostility and snapping attitudes. He looks like an arrogant thug who refuses to communicate, but the heartbreaking truth is he literally doesn't know how. They lack the basic vocabulary to name the storm raging inside their own chests. Buried deep beneath that fiery rage are raw, bleeding emotions, crushing grief, burning shame, agonizing anxiety, and suffocating guilt. Honestly, 90% of human conflicts could be completely diffused if people just knew the exact name of the pain they were feeling. As dawn breaks over Dumpling Village, a local thug excitedly chatters with his crew, boasting that since the sun is finally up, they need to grab some hot dumplings and a drink so he can reveal exactly where he scored all this cash. A heavy shoulder shoves past him. He whips around a curse already on his lips, only to freeze he is staring dead into the eyes of the flesh-eaters. Pure terror overrides his senses, leaving a warm, wiping his hands as he decides to peek in on the bespectacled kid to see if he has finally stirred from his slumber. He is hoping to treat him to a hot, filling breakfast. His stone-faced assistant raises an eyebrow, questioning why the boss is handing out free meals again, but Mongol waves him off. The kid's stomach must be entirely empty after last night. Plus, Mongol admits his own behavior yesterday was way out of line for a grown man. At the end of the day, he is just a starving stray pup with nowhere else to go. Mongol hands over the tray, ordering his lackey to drop it off. Suddenly, the door flies open as another subordinate bursts into the room, gasping that a massive disaster just struck. The Bone Eater. That monstrous villain has breached their village. Mongol scrunches his brow, drawing a total blank. His grim assistant quickly fills him in. This is the notorious psycho who feasts on human flesh. The ultimate predator who treats people like an all-you-can-eat buffet. That scumbag is absolute rock bottom. The assistant offers to rally the guard and wipe the threat out, but Mongol instantly commands Legos to stand down. Sparking a bloody brawl right now would only trigger an unstoppable massacre. Their smartest play is to welcome the monster with open arms and a polite smile. They simply cannot risk the innocent villagers becoming collateral damage. Elsewhere, Dante finally peels his eyes open, marveling at how long it has been since he crashed this hard. His stomach roars with a ferocious hunger, and the thick stench of his own sweat makes him crave a steaming shower. Glancing over, he spots 182 still completely knocked out. It is mind-blowing to see the guy looking so serene. He usually radiates the tense, coiled energy of a cornered beast. So why is his guard totally dropped today? Slowly, Dante hovers two trembling fingers over the boy's lips, just checking for a warm breath. The steady exhale hits his skin, and Dante realizes this killing machine is actually human after all. Sliding into his sneakers, he sneaks out into the hall to track down Mongol, desperately hoping to find a working restroom. But he stops dead in his tracks. A chilling sight freezes his blood. The Bone Eater is right there, casually lounging across a table from Mongol. Dante's pupils shrink as he instantly recognizes the maniac from his class. This guy reeks of pure evil. Did this psycho actually track him all the way down here just to slaughter him? The suspense skyrockets when the monster slaps a crumpled photo of 182 onto the wood, coldly demanding if Mongol recognizes the face. Heart pounding, Dante cannot risk waiting to hear Mongol sell them out. He spins on his heel, sprinting back to the room, knowing they need to vanish immediately. In a massive twist, Mongol smoothly lies, swearing he has never seen the kid. Overhearing this, Dante's jaw drops. The flesh-eater growls, complaining that his stomach— How are they going to fix that? He demands meat right now, but the villain's crony leans in, whispering that the target is definitely hiding in this very settlement. The boy they spotted earlier is undeniably close. Mongol better spit out the truth right now, or he will end up on the psycho's dinner plate. The cannibal violently kicks his chair back, slamming both fists onto the table, as his dead eyes scan the trembling room, weighing out which pathetic soul looks the most appetizing. Before a single blade can be drawn, Mongol throws a hand up, boldly interrupting the monster to offer him a steaming plate of dumplings. The deranged killer scoffs, spitting that he refuses to chew on garbage-tier peasant food. Unfazed Mongol looks him dead in the eye, promising this flavor will completely blow his twisted mind. He vows to cook up a legendary masterpiece right there in the kitchen. And if the meal turns out so utterly foul that even a starving mutt would reject it, Mongol swears to strip off his own coat and serve himself up as the main course. The entire room gasps, completely horrified by this suicidal gamble. But the chef just chuckles, telling his men to wipe the sheer terror off their faces. Have they zero faith in his culinary genius? These are the undisputed legendary dumplings of their home, unmatched by anything else. Dante, meanwhile, tears back into the bedroom, completely convinced the whole settlement has lost their damn minds. Those cheap buns are literally stuffed with rotting leftovers and scrap. Even if they somehow manage not to poison the cannibal, they are miles away from gourmet. Why the hell is Mongol putting his own neck on the chopping block to protect a kid he barely knows? Dante lunges at 182, shaking his shoulders frantically. But the second the sleeper's eyes snap open, pure instinct takes over. 182 violently tackles Dante, wrapping a deadly grip around his throat, before his blurry vision finally clears. Dante chokes back a gasp, genuinely terrified by the sheer hostility. What the heck triggered that? Was he trapped in some brutal night terror? Snapping awake with lethal force is nowhere near normal human behavior. Panting, Dante quickly asks if his legs still work, urging him to get up off the floor. 182 glares back with a wildly irritated expression, scoffing to ask if Dante is satisfied now. Ignoring the attitude, Dante urgently demands to know if the guy is strong enough to bust out of this village solo.